Snowflakes spiraled like pale embers across the godswood, mingling with ash that drifted from distant burning trebuchets. In the weirwood's bleeding boughs, Arya Stark, silent as moonshadow, pounced from a crooked branch with catspaw in hand. Yet the Night King, his sapphire gaze fixed upon an ancient eternity, pivoted with inhuman poise. Fingers of ice snared her wrist mid-stroke. Steel scraped blue-white armor. Sparks leapt and died. The dagger never met its mark. Time froze, then shattered. The Night King's cold palm thrust, flinging Arya toward the pool beneath the heart tree. Her body struck frozen water, breath bursting from her in a white plume. Catspaw spun away, skittering across thin ice before sinking with a whisper. Pain blossomed like wildfire behind her ribs, a mortal heat that did nothing to warm. Bran Stark, rooted in his chair of carved weirwood, sensed the thread of fate snap. His pupils glazed white, his mind scattering through ravens and wolves, but even the boundless sky could not lift the weight of that failure. He felt Arya's shock, her lungs burning, her limbs seizing with freezing water, and in that instant every path he had glimpsed dissolved into a blizzard of screaming futures. The Night King turned from the pool, ignoring the child drowning at his feet, and strode toward the open gate of the godswood. Outside, chaos reigned. Dire wolves howled. Unsullied spears clattered on stone. Dothraki shrieks curled with terror rather than triumph. The dead pressed through breaches in Winterfell's crumbling walls, climbing over their own to reach warm flesh. Above, dragons wheeled, one aflame and the other torn by icy spears, roaring misery that shook snow from ramparts. Ghosts darted between corpses, fur spattered black with blood. The dire wolf snarled at wights that once wore familiar faces. Stable hands, stewards, even Maester Wolken. Now empty eyes and snapping teeth. Jon Snow vaulted from the battlements. Long claws blade a quicksilver arc cleaving bone and sinew. Yet each felled wight rose anew at the Night King's silent command. Jon's muscles screamed, sword arm numbing, hope draining like heat from his breath. At the courtyard's center, Ser Jorah Mormont bled from a dozen rents in his plate while Daenerys knelt beside him, dragonglass blade trembling in her fist. "Stay with me," she begged, though the old knight's eyes were fading star shards. Drogon swooped, incinerating a knot of dead, but frost clung to his scales, dimming the crimson glow beneath. A second flight of ice-forged spears pierced his wing membrane. The dragon bellowed, banking toward the godswood in search of his queen. Inside the crypts, muffled shrieks echoed as ancestors clawed from alcoves. Sansa pressed her back against the damp stone, clutching Tyrion's shaking hand. Dust rained from the vaulted ceiling as ancient kings in the north pounded against iron gates meant to keep them at rest. "We have to help them," Tyrion whispered, yet terror pinched his words small. Through a crack in the gate, they watched blue eyes igniting in blackness, one by one, like candles of doom. Above, Samwell Tarly staggered across the killing field strewn with half-burned rampart timbers, his dragonglass dagger slick with blood. He tripped over Dolorous Ed's torn cloak, voice cracking with grief. A squad of wights closed, he braced for death, but they parted under Grey Wind's charge. Yet the dire wolf bore a death wound, ribs showing through fur, and when he fell silent moments later, Sam felt Winterfell's heart stutter with him. In the godswood, Arya crawled from ice water, coughing shards of breath. Her lips blued, armor heavy as millstone. The heart tree watched, red leaves trembling like wounds. She saw Catspaw's hilt beneath the glassy surface, but her fingers were numb claws. Bran's chair lay overturned, wheels cracked. The Night King had moved on. Only ravens, his ravens, circled overhead, cawing despair. A horn blast split the night. 3 blows, the signal for the dead inside the walls. Davos Seaworth, face smeared with ash, vaulted from the great hall steps, waving burning pitch torches. "Fall back to the keep," he bellowed, voice hoarse. Unsullied ranks contracted, shields locking, but gaps yawned where brothers had stood a breath before. The living funneled through bridal gates now choked with corpses. Jon spied the Night King gliding along the outer bailey. He sprinted, breath ragged, but bodies hampered every step. The king raised a hand, the gesture slow, short, inevitable. All around, fallen soldiers jerked upright. Mormonts, Karstarks, even Lady Lyanna's tiny frame, eyes burning cerulean. Jon halted, horror twisting his heart. These were his people rising against him. Drogon crashed beyond the keep with a quake that toppled banners. Daenerys raced to him, cloak blazing where embers landed. She touched his snout. Frost rhymed her silver hair. The dragon's chest rose shallow, steam hissing through wounds. In his pain, he could not rise. The Night King advanced, spear of ice materializing in his fist. From the Godswood's edge, Bran's chair scraped as Theon Greyjoy pushed it onto the battlefield, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I failed you," he told the three-eyed raven within his brother. "Let me try once more." He drew a broken spear, last of the Ironborn line, and met the Night King midway. The spear shattered against eternal ice. Theon followed, impaled upon crystalline blade. As life fled his eyes, he whispered apology to every ghost he carried. Jon roared, charging anew, but a tide of whites closed between them. Blow after blow he struck, Longclaw ringing, yet he moved slower, the cold biting deeper than steel. Through the swarm he glimpsed the Night King lifting his spear, aiming not at him but at Drogon's exposed breast. A sudden wind howled. From crumbled wall top, regal, tattered wings beating, dived screeching. The wounded dragon slammed into the Night King, talons scraping uselessly against armored ice. A spear burst through Regal's throat in a fountain of black smoking blood. The beast writhed, cascaded into the courtyard, crushing both living and dead. Its dying roar rolled like thunder, snuffing torches across Winterfell. Darkness swallowed color. In its black belly, shouts morphed to screams. Flames died, replaced by the pale luminescence of undead eyes. Sansa and Tyrion burst from the crypts with a knot of survivors, only to freeze upon seeing the courtyard overrun. Ghostly kings and queens from ages past prowling among present doom. Brienne of Tarth, shield cracked, planted herself before Sansa. Podrick at her side, bleeding from ear to collar, still sang half-remembered songs to steady his heart. Together they hacked a path toward the weirwood, believing Bran might yet guide them. Arya, shivering but alive, crawled from roots to path, clutching a splintered branch as makeshift stake. Ghost materialized, flank matted, and pressed his muzzle to her cheek. She buried her face in his fur, drawing fierce strength. Somewhere beyond, the Night King's presence radiated, an absence of life so profound it seemed to invert the night. Davos rallied a final pocket of defenders at the Great Hall doors. Gendry with Warhammer slick, Tormund missing 2 fingers, Sam propped by Ed's broken pike. They knew no retreat remained. The Night King approached across a carpet of frost and corpses, his lieutenants flanking like mirrored shards. Jon burst free of whites, stumbling into their line, mouth crimson with another's blood. He met Daenerys' eyes across the churn. Grief and fury warred there, but beneath both burned a dimming ember of hope. She lifted a torch. "Dracarys," she whispered, though Drogon could not answer. The torch arced through snow, landing in the slick at the Night King's feet. Flames licked his boots, guttered, died, quenched by chill that devoured even fire. He advanced, spear poised. Bran's voice echoed then. Not aloud but inside every mind touched by the weirwood's roots. The war is not yet lost. Choices weave beyond sight. Protect the living. Survive the night. His plea flickered like candlelight, yet within it Jon felt reason to draw breath once more. Jon raised Longclaw high, rally cry torn from a throat raw. "For the living!" They charged, a desperate knot of humanity, meeting winter incarnate. Steel met ice, sparks hissed, flesh split. Tormund's axe severed a lieutenant's arm. Brienne's sword rang off unbreakable armor. Gendry's hammer crumpled a white skull only for it to reform beneath blue flame. The Night King stepped through them as water around stones. Longclaw struck his breast. Ice splintered, but no deeper than first layer. Jon reeled, wrist numb, as the king's spear whipped forward, grazing his ribs and frosting his lungs with instant cold. In that breathless lull, Arya appeared behind the Night King once more, branch stake aimed at the nape of his neck. Yet he twisted effortlessly, palm clutching her throat. She gasped, feet kicking air. Jon screamed her name, lunging, but a wall of whites seized him. Frost crept along Arya's jaw, white hairline fractals branching over skin. Yet her eyes blazed gray fire. Ghost sprang, fangs bared, dragging at the Night King's arm without effect. At the courtyard's periphery, the broken heart tree shuddered, and Bran's chair lurched forward, empty. A shadow moved beyond its wheels, wearing Bran's cloak though its stride was sure. The raven had warged into something new. Through blinding snow Jon could not discern who bore Bran's mantle, but he felt purpose emanating. Ravens tore from rooftops, swirling above in a vortex, their cries a single wordless command. The figure raised an ancient blade forged of heart tree root and Valyrian steel intertwined, something born of memory and fire. The Night King paused, head canting. In that hesitation Arya slipped free, dropping to knees. Jon broke white grip, ramming Longclaw through brittle skulls. Daenerys thrust Dragonglass into a lieutenant's spine. Sam braced her as she nearly collapsed. The figure advanced, passing through living and dead untouched. Snow melted on contact with that blade, leaving grass black beneath. Sound hushed, the world waiting. But the Night King smiled, cracks radiating across frozen lips, and snapped his fingers. A boom like glacier calving split the air. Winterfell's remaining walls collapsed inward, burying defenders under stone and snow. A fountain of earth engulfed the heart tree, extinguishing the mysterious blade's glow. Silence followed, save the creak of settling ice. Then colossal gates groaned open behind the Night King. The dead beyond swarmed forward, an endless river of winter sweeping through shattered halls, down crypt stairs, up broken turrets. Winterfell, ancestral haven of the north, fell in that moment. Fires guttered, life smothered, hope choked beneath the weight of centuries dead. Yet beneath rubble, pockets of warmth persisted. Jon shielding Arya's limp body, Brienne dragging Sansa toward the broken godswood, Davos guiding Sam through a half-buried postern, Daenerys pressing trembling lips to Drogon's icy snout. Their hearts beat, fragile drums in the deep, each pulse a promise that death had not yet claimed all. And in the dark roots beneath the heart tree, a single green shoot pushed through frozen loam, stubborn as dawn. Frost-laden silence clung to the shattered courtyard until the fallen walls groaned, settling their weight upon themselves like a dying giant. From beneath a jagged slab of basalt near the smithy, Jon clawed his way through a crevice scarcely wider than his shoulders. Snow and masonry poured after him, hissing across his cloak. His lungs ached from dust. Every breath tasted of lime and grief. Longclaw was still clutched in his right hand. Somehow he had kept it even as stone pressed the life from his ribs. He dragged his body forward and emerged into a sliver of moonlit night that reeked of smoke and death. Ghost slunk beside him, ribs heaving, the direwolf's crimson-spattered coat now crusted with ice. Jon glanced back into the darkness where Arya lay, and for a heartbeat terror squeezed his chest that she had been lost to the cave-in. But then a small, shaking hand thrust through the rubble, fingers blue as dusk. He seized her wrist and hauled until her full weight slid free. She rasped a single shallow breath, then another, eyes fluttering open. They were storm gray, resolute, alive. Jon pressed his brow to hers. The touch lingered only a moment before Ghost snarled a warning. Across the courtyard, whites drifted like moths around a bonfire, their blue eyes glowing amid swirling ash. They prowled through fractured portcullises and along the ramparts in tireless patrols, but at present none had turned toward the three living souls sprawled in the ruin's shadow. Jon noted the new order in their movements. Once erratic swarms now marched in concise files, each step measured, obedient. The Night King sought not merely slaughter but occupation. Winterfell was to be his capital of ice, a bastion from which winter would march south unbroken. Jon straightened, the cold lancing his side where the spear had grazed. He dared not check the wound. Pain told him enough. Arya knelt, testing swollen fingers. Her splintered branch had vanished beneath stone. She searched for another weapon with her gaze and found none. Instead, she placed her palm to the ground, eyes narrowing at the dim reverberation beneath. Innumerable footfalls, the vibration of an undead garrison settling into its new fortress. "We have minutes before they scour every corner," she whispered, voice ragged. "We need to get underground." Jon nodded. "The crypt tunnels. There's a breach by the old kennel arch. The soil collapsed during the blast." He helped her stand. Ghost padded ahead, pale eyes tracking the shadows with feral intuition. They limped along a wall buckled outward by the collapse, hugging darkness until they reached the yawning tear in the flagstone courtyard, where the blast had ripped a trench through 3 generations of masonry. Frost rimed the exposed soil, and cold vapors drifted upward as though the earth itself exhaled despair. They slid down on their bellies, boots crunching quiet avalanches into the void. Below, torchlight flickered, an improbable, precious glow. Brienne of Tarth guarded the breach, battered shield propped like a rampart while Podrick crouched beside her, whetting a dagger that had once been a table knife. Sansa clung to Brienne's cloak, cheeks streaked with soot yet jaw set like a trueborn Stark. When Sansa saw Jon and Arya emerge, relief melted her mask. She ran to them, arms encircling them both despite the space of armor plates. Jon held her, feeling the faint thunder of her heart. Davos, Samwell, and Gendry labored beyond, clearing debris from a narrow stair that plunged still deeper. Davos's lantern threw shifting silhouettes upon the carved faces of Stark kings set into the crypt walls, their stone swords seeming to quiver with impatience. Sam paused to wipe grime from baby Sam's brow. Gilly had swaddled the boy in torn cloaks, cooing softly to stave her own panic. Tormund lumbered nearby, 2 fingers missing, hauling an oaken beam aside with a grunt. The survivor Sam had guided from the great hall numbered scarcely 2 dozen. Sansa gestured to the stair. "We're following an old miner's gallery that the masons widened into a catacomb centuries ago. Bran showed me the layout. There's an exit in the Wolfswood, half a league north." Arya glanced upward at the hole. "That's our path out, unless the Night King scents us in the dark." "The Night King does not smell," Tormund grunted, wiping blood from his beard. "But he hears whispers in the snow. We crawl quiet as ghosts." Jon's eyes drifted to Ghost, who flicked an ear as if in acknowledgement. "We head now," he agreed, "but we need to find Daenerys. She was alive near Drogon." Brienne grimaced. "The yard between here and the Godswood is crawling. We can't bring wounded through." From deeper in the tunnel came a distant clatter, iron striking stone. Podrick stiffened, blade lifting. Davos swung the lantern. Torchlight revealed Daenerys herself stumbling into the passage, shoulders bowed beneath the half-collapsed weight of Drogon's scorched wing membrane draped across her like a cloak. Blood seeped through rents in her cuirass, yet her eyes burned with ferocity unmatched by the flames that had once answered her call. Behind her, Grey Worm and a knot of Unsullied steadied a stretcher bearing Jorah Mormont's limp form. His breath rattled faintly. Dragonglass shards protruded from his jerkin. Each one glowed ice blue at its tip. A murmur of astonishment swept the gathered. Daenerys lifted her head. "Rhaegal is dead," she said, voice brittle as thin ice. "Drogon is crippled. But the war is not over, so long as any of us draw breath." She ignored their attempts to aid her, moving to the pocket of space Davos had cleared. "We flee north into the trees. We heal, we plan, we return." Jon approached, eyes pleading for forgiveness that words could not convey. She gave him a single nod, neither gentle nor cold, an acknowledgement of shared purpose deeper than love. Then she knelt beside Jorah, stroking scattered gray curls from his brow. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away, steel replacing salt. The refugees formed a column. Davos led, lantern raised low, muttering the names of forgotten saints. Podrick and Gendry carried pickaxes to break fresh obstruction. Sam bent beneath the weight of ancient Stark honor as he lifted a rust-pitted sword from a sarcophagus. Anything to repel the dead if they breached. Brienne and Tormund flanked the stretcher, while Jon and Daenerys walked side by side, swords bared, eyes fixed on the murk ahead. Sansa held Arya's hand, thumb tracing circles of warmth over her bruised knuckles. Ghost lingered near the rear, hackles prickling at every hollow whisper. As they descended, the earth swallowed the clash of battle above. The Whites' clacking hands, the dragon's shrieks, even the Night King's glacial heartbeat. Such horrors faded to muffled rumor. Instead, only the drip of meltwater echoed. The walls narrowed. Inscriptions of forgotten Starks marched past in silent witness. Torches cast dancing light that made their engraved eyes flicker, as though the dead kings mourned their crumbled realm. Miles behind, dim yet undeniable, an ice-cold pulse thrummed. Jon felt it in his ribs, an ache that replied to the frost inside his spear wound. The Night King's presence, distant but relentless. And something else, a subtle tug, like threads of destiny cinching taut around them all. Bran's message in the mind, choices weave. Jon wondered if Bran yet lived, or if his spirit now flew among ravens forever. The memory lent speed to his feet. They reached a junction where tunnels branched like a spider's web. Torches revealed support beams cracked by the tremor of the wall collapse. Loose shale dusted the air. One false strike could bury them anew. Davos consulted a half-burned parchment. A map Bran had sketched on scraps earlier that day. Left 3 passages, then upslope until the roots of the Wolfswood, he murmured. Tormund's laughter rumbled, though its mirth was thin. If the map is wrong, we'll come out sucking seawater. Podrick glanced at Arya's pallid face. Better water than White's. They veered left. The passage tightened to single file. Moisture slicked the ground. Rivulets streamed from fissures overhead, chilled to teeth-aching cold. The dripping echoed like distant footsteps, an illusion that set nerves fraying. Sam clutched Gilly's shoulder, whispering reassurances that convinced neither of them. Hours or minutes, for time unraveled in constant dread, slipped past. Eventually the roof rose, air warming slightly as geothermal veins threaded ancient rock. The survivors emerged into a cavern lit by phosphorescent lichen tinting everything sea green. At its center grew a single ash sapling, leaves delicate and white, defiant amid stone. Arya halted, gaze fixed on it. The sapling was identical to the green shoot she had glimpsed under the godswood before the blast. Here it stood taller, as though nourished by deeper magic. Daenerys stepped forward, palm brushing a leaf. Warmth radiated through her glove, foreign in the subterranean chill. "Fire and life," she whispered. "I feel them here." Jon examined the bark. Veins of obsidian glinted beneath. "Dragon glass," he murmured. He sheathed Longclaw and pressed his injured side to the trunk. The frostache receded, replaced by dull heat that knit torn flesh. Sam's eyes widened. If this is a child of the weirwood, perhaps its roots link to every other. Bran's magic might linger. Davos raised his lantern. Etched into the cavern walls were swirling glyphs, neither runes of men nor children. Whorls of dragon and wolf entwined, flame interlaced with leaf. Podrick traced one with hesitant finger. Old Valyrian? Gendry shook his head. Older. Sansa moved to Arya. Can we take a cutting? We could plant it at our next holdfast. Carry Winterfell with us. Arya smiled faintly, but her gaze remained distant. She reached for a small branch, snapped it clean. Sap bled pale gold, like morning's first light. She tucked the twig into her belt. Grey worm cleared his throat. Blood flecked his lip, and gestured deeper into the cavern where a low arch beckoned. Through it, a tunnel sloped upward, the air crisp with promise of night wind. Davos nodded. They began anew, spirits lifted by the sapling's unexpected blessing. Yet as the last survivors passed, Yora's stretcher paused. His eyes fluttered open. Daenerys knelt, cradling his head. "Save your strength," she whispered. He shook it weakly. "Khaleesi, listen." His voice cracked. "The dead follow us. I feel the cold inside my bones." She clasped his hand, tears finally escaping. "Not yet, my friend." But the blue glow at each shard of dragonglass in his chest brightened. Yora's brow beaded frost. He gasped, "Burn me before it's too late." Daenerys's tears fell sizzling onto his cheek. She knew the truth. If they carried him further, he would rise against them in these claustrophobic tunnels. But no flame remained. Torches alone could not grant true release. She looked to Jon helplessly. Jon crouched, laying a hand over Yora's heart. "We won't leave you to the Night King." He sheathed Longclaw and drew a dragonglass dagger from Sam's belt. Meeting Yora's gaze, he waited for the faint nod. Then he thrust the blade deep. Frost retreated from Yora's eyes. They softened, warm as summer. His final breath was a sigh of relief, and then nothing. Silence held. Daenerys closed his lids. Tormund murmured a northern prayer. Davos traced the sign of the mother. They covered Yora with Daenerys's torn cloak, weighting it with stones from the cave floor. No pyre, no song, but a peace untainted by ice. They pressed on, sorrow a muted drumbeat. The upward slope narrowed, so steep that Gilly had to pass baby Sam to Podrick while she climbed on all fours. The air thinned until each breath seared throat and lung. Yet with each step, the promise of open sky beckoned. Finally, they reached a wooden hatch set into the tunnel ceiling, frosted planks bound by iron strap. Gendry hefted his pickaxe and pried. Snow cascaded, revealing night scattered with stars. One by one, they hauled themselves into the wolfswood. Pines groaned under fresh powder. A pale moon crowned by tattered aurora bathed the forest in ghostly greens. No white tracks marked this clearing. Ghost bounded through drifts, circling the perimeter. Satisfied, he howled. A long, lonely note that shivered birds from high boughs. The survivors huddled, breath pluming. Jon scanned the treeline for watchers. None yet. For now, they had outrun death. But distance was no shield. South of Winterfell, hundreds of fires once lit by men now lay drowned in snow. Villages from Torrens Square to Barrowton had emptied, inhabitants marching north to defend the great castle. Now they marched back as thralls, moving at the Night King's behest. In coming days, that tide would spill beyond the neck, washing cold over Moat Cailin, White Harbor, even the green fields of the Reach if left unchecked. Winterfell's fall was the hinge of a door swinging wide to swallow the world. Arya studied the horizon where faint blue flickers danced, the light of distant whites. "We can't run forever," she said. "We need to end him." Jon agreed. "But we can't face him until we have fire and dragonglass enough to pierce his armor. And Bran, if he lives, knows more than any of us how." Sam knelt, unrolling the map again atop a fallen log. "Bran told me of the Isle of Faces. The heart trees there are older than recorded time, roots thick with children's magic. If Bran's spirit fled the Godswood, it might travel those waters. We could meet him, or at least find answers." Daenerys wrapped arms around herself. Teeth chattering though flames seemed to dance behind her eyes. "The Isle lies in the Trident. Between here and there stands every river and frozen field, soon to crawl with dead. And Drogon cannot fly." Gendry examined the trees. "But ships from White Harbor could carry us down the White Knife to the Bight, then south around the Fingers and up the Green Fork. The sea remains free of whites so far." Davos rubbed his beard. "Lady Mormont's cousin commands at White Harbor. If any ships survived the call north, we might persuade him." Sansa listened, gaze distant. "We must send word to every southern lord that Winterfell has fallen. They will have heard rumors, but they won't understand the scale. We must rally them at Moat Cailin. Fortify the neck, buy time." Podrick hesitated. "Ravens won't reach them. The skies belong to the Night King now." Grey Worm, stoic though blood seeped from an unseen wound, spoke. "The Unsullied will march as vanguard. We cut a path south, protect the Queen. We can hold Moat Cailin long enough for ships to sail." Daenerys met his gaze. Pride, sorrow, gratitude mingling. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've sworn enough for one lifetime, Grey Worm, but I will accept your courage." Jon turned to Tormund. "Take what free folk remain. Scout east of Winterfell. Slow the dead fires, traps, ambushes. You know the woods better than they." Tormund grinned despite missing fingers. "I will make them regret dying." Plans formed, fragile as hoarfrost. Supplies were scarce. A satchel of dried venison, a wineskin half full, torches, 3 lanterns, 3 dozen dragonglass daggers, and the branch from the cavern which Arya now held. But hearts were iron, beaten in Winterfell's heat and quenched in its snow. They rested that night in the wolfswood, building no fire lest they draw attention. Cold gnawed, yet each clung to memory of the sapling's glow. Its warmth lingered in bone. Jon took first watch, ghost pressed against his thigh, eyes reflecting star silver. Across the clearing Daenerys sat beside Yora's empty cloak, fingers worrying the torn fabric, lips moving in quiet Valyrian prayer. Arya slept fitfully, dreams haunted by the Night King's grip upon her throat. In sleep she relived her leap, the dagger's path, its failed strike. She woke with a silent scream, palms sweating despite the frost. Sansa stroked her hair until tremors ceased. "You were brave," Sansa murmured. "You still are." Arya stared into her sister's eyes, seeing the reflection of a girl who had once longed only to dance with swords, not steal through shadows of apocalypse. She whispered, "Next time I won't miss." Dawn came as a faint graying of the northern horizon. No sun breached the clouds. Snow continued its lazy descent. Jon roused the camp. Grey Worm organized the Unsullied with quiet commands. Davos helped Sam fashion a sled from fallen branches to pull supplies. The stretcher that had carried Yora now bore torches, and the lichen-lit shards Podrick had chipped from cavern walls. Perhaps they held latent warmth. Before they set off, Daenerys knelt by Drogon's broken wing, which lay draped over a boulder where she had placed it the previous night. She pressed her brow to blackened membrane, whispering promises of sky and fire yet to come. Drogon, miles behind amid Winterfell's ruin, lifted his head weakly, as if feeling that vow. The party broke camp and moved southeast, weaving through ever-thickening trees. Tracks of elk crossed theirs. Ravens flapped overhead, cawing warnings Jon feared were Bran's attempts to guide them. They saw no sign of whites until midday, when Gendry heard distant crunching.
Jon signaled halt.
Through a veil of spruce, a procession of undead nobles trudged, women in tattered gowns, men in ruined mail, blue eyes fixed forward. They bore banners of Karstark and Umber, though frost obscured sigils. At their fore shuffled the corpse of Lord Umber's maester, chain jingling. The march angled northwest, away from the survivors. They waited breathless until the last straggler vanished. Sansa exhaled. "They'll gather every dead in the north." Sam touched the dragonglass sword he had taken. "We're live bait if we leave a trail." Davos nodded. "We move over streambeds, cover tracks. Make for the King's Road by dusk." The King's Road, once a lifeline through the north, was now a corridor of emptiness. Farmhouses lay smoldering, wagons overturned. Horses charred in harness where fire arrows had dropped them. Yet the road itself, though blanketed in snow, remained passable. They marched single file along its edge, eyes scanning frost-silenced horizons. Occasional gusts unveiled Winterfell's distant silhouette, a half-collapsed crown where plumes of black smoke still spiraled into the cloud-low sky. Tormund and his free folk parted at the ford of the last river. They exchanged rough embraces. Arya handed Tormund a pouch of dragonglass arrowheads forged in the castle's smithy before the siege. He grinned. "Sharp as your tongue, girl. Sharp enough to stop your bullshit," she replied, forcing a smile. He roared laughter loud enough to stir crows, then turned his band eastward, disappearing amid flurries. The main company pushed south. By nightfall, they reached the ruins of a toll house once manned by Karstark men. Its roof was gone, but stone walls offered respite from wind. Davos kindled a small fire hidden in the hearth's remains, using dry pine Sam had carried under his cloak. They melted snow for water, boiled what little oats remained. Baby Sam giggled at the rising steam, momentarily erasing the horror carved into every adult face. Daenerys sat apart, tear tracks frozen on cheeks. Jon joined her, cloak draped across both shoulders. Words felt clumsy, but silence heavier. At last she whispered, "I thought Dragonfire could conquer anything." Jon stared at the tiny flame flickering between their boots. Even dragons know cold, but fire can be reborn. From ash, from a sapling in the dark. He told her of the warmth that healed his wound. She listened, hope flickering. Suddenly Arya stood before them. She extended the twig from the cavern. Leaves glowed faintly emerald despite night. "Plant it," she said. "When dragons fly again, they'll need a hearth. This is one." She jabbed it into a chink between flagstones near the fire. Instantly the twig rooted, drawing moisture, leaves brightening with internal light. The company gathered, all wiping fatigue from their eyes. Daenerys's breath trembled. "It's beautiful." Jon watched the leaves unfurl. A promise. The sapling's light swelled, filling the toll house with humid warmth. Wounds stopped bleeding. Frostbitten fingers tingled. Even the ice in Yora's cloak melted, droplets pattering like gentle rain. Sam pressed a palm to his son's cheek, warm for the first time since the siege began. But outside the walls, the forest stirred. Snow-laden boughs shook as though brushed by unseen hands. Ghost growled. Jon drew Longclaw. The warmth of the sapling might be a beacon for eyes tuned to magic. Grey Worm ordered torches doused. The fire died, yet the sapling's glow persisted. They moved to defensive positions. Brienne and Podrick covered the road. Gendry and Davos barred the rear door with a timber beam. The first white appeared at the window slit, face pressed to stone, mouth frozen into rictus grin. Jon thrust Longclaw through its eye. It crashed inward, lifeless once more. But others materialized, drawn by the light. Children, elders, soldiers, all blue-lit. They hammered at the door, clawed the shutters. Snow puffed in clouds as they collided. Daenerys stood, eyes molten. "Away from the sapling," she commanded. Sansa carried Gilly and the child behind the hearth. Arya poised at her side, dragonglass dagger reversed in fist. Jon led the counter. Brienne's sword rang, Podrick's dagger flicked, and Grey Worm's short spear spun a lethal dance. Yet numbers multiplied, scores, then hundreds. The beam splintered. Dragonglass slew quickly, but corpses piled to impede movement. Sam fought back-to-back with Davos, a maester's chain rattling across his chest like distant thunder. A crack sounded above. The thatchless rafters sagged under white weight. They dropped through like wolves upon fold. Gendry swung his hammer, collapsing skulls, but a dead Karstark knight landed atop him, crushing him to knees. Arya vaulted onto a table, dagger slitting throats with fluid grace. Sansa, seized by terror, nonetheless lifted a rusted longsword and hewed at clambering hands. Jon spied a tall wight unlike the rest. Not decayed, but frozen armor shimmering, eyes blazing fierce as the Night King's lieutenants. A lesser general. Forced through the doorframe, iceblade raised. Longclaw met it in a shower of sparks, but cold numbed Jon's fingers at first clash. The lieutenant's strength matched his. Only Ghost's surprise lunge tore it aside, jaws crunching through its hip. Jon buried Longclaw in its throat. The blade's Valyrian fire pulsed, and the white exploded into shards. Instantly, a quarter of the undead collapsed, their animating force severed. Yet more pressed. Daenerys knelt by the sapling. She whispered Valyrian words once used to wake dragons from stone. The leaves glowed brighter, pulsing. Green light flooded the room, casting shadows like writhing roots. Where it touched white flesh, frost cracked and limbs fell dead again. The dead shrieked, retreating, but the call of the Night King compelled them forward anew. Brienne's shield shattered. Podrick yanked her from beneath falling timbers. Gendry crawled free of bodies, bleeding from scalp. Jon hacked left and right, but his muscles slogged. Arya, breathing hard, climbed the hearth for vantage, only to see White scale the outside wall for another drop. In desperation, Sam recalled ancient lore, songs of burning leaves to call the children's fire. He snatched a torch and set the sapling's lowest twig aflame. The leaf ignited not red but emerald. A column of green wildfire erupted, roaring to ceiling height without consuming wood or stone. It lashed outward in a breath, coated every white in the chamber, burning none of the living. Flesh bubbled, bones smoked, blue eyes popped like eggs in frying pans. Within seconds, silence reigned. Ashes drifted where foes had stood. The wildfire guttered, sagging into the twig, but leaving the sapling alive, untouched. Its light dulled, but a faint heartbeat of green remained. The toll house stank of cooked rot, yet no flame licked walls. Sam stared at the torch in wonder. Wildfire tempered by children's magic, he murmured. It destroyed only the dead. They wasted no time abandoning the ruin. Before leaving, Daenerys plucked a handful of leaves from the sapling and tucked them beside her heart. Jon uprooted the little tree carefully, wrapping roots in oiled cloth. If its magic could summon controlled wildfire, it might be the weapon they lacked. They resumed the march, silent save for crunching snow. The trail toward the white knife was arduous, but adrenaline carried them. Each carried a new hope, green and fierce. The Night King could be burned, if they reached the river, if ships awaited, if the south still held. But north, above Winterfell's corpse, ice storm clouds churned. The Night King stood upon a parapet of refrozen stone, gazing toward the wolfswood with unblinking malice. At his feet, Bran's wheelchair lay broken, its occupant gone. A single raven perched on the chair arm, preening calmly. The Night King raised a hand. The raven cocked its head, cawed, then launched into the storm. Within the courtyard below, Drogon stirred weakly, fetters of ice binding his limbs. The Night King lifted an arm. Frost crept deeper into dragon flesh. Black scales cracked with white seams. Crying out, Drogon thrashed. But spear hilts driven through his wings pinned him. The Night King stepped onto the beast's neck, palm pressing between obsidian scales. Blue fire sparked. A sound like cracking glaciers echoed across the ruin. Drogon screamed, flame billowing from cracked jaws, but it was no longer red gold. It was azure. The dragon's eyes, once molten magma, glowed cerulean. Winter's steed had been reborn. Far away, Daenerys stumbled, clutching her chest. The sapling she carried flickered. Jon steadied her. She whispered, "He's taken Drogon." Tears cut new tracks through grime. Despair clawed the group, but Jon forced steel into his voice. "Then we will free him or end his suffering. But we keep moving." They pressed on through darkness while behind them, skies lit with dragon blue flame. The great wall of the north lay broken, but the hearts of its scattered defenders beat with wild green fire. And somewhere on wings of shadow, a raven flew south, carrying within it the last thread of a boy named Bran, weaving paths unseen toward a dawn none could yet imagine. The road stretched before them, perilous and cold, but their footsteps did not falter. For in every crunch of snow beneath their boots pulsed a stubborn defiance, older than winter, fiercer than fire. The will of the living to rise after every fall, to fight past every night, to claim the dawn no matter how long it tarried. Wind sighed through the wolfswood as the column advanced, weaving between narrow trunks where fresh sap oozed like blood from bark slashed by undead claws. Jon walked point with Ghost padding ahead, white fur a living banner of resistance. Behind him the survivors kept measured pace, torches hooded to preserve their scant fuel. Snow fell fitfully, swirling eddies that obscured prints almost as soon as they formed, nature conspiring with their need for secrecy. Yet every few dozen steps Jon halted, kneeling to brush fresh powder from the King's Road, studying the faint indents of shambling boots pressed hours before. The dead, too, had gone south. He rose, gripping Longclaw until leather bit his palm, and waved the column on. Arya glided up beside him, her gait cat-like despite exhaustion. Tracks veer east after the Weeping Willow Bridge, she murmured. Maybe the Night King sends part of his horde to Torrens Square. Or he knows we'll need food and shelter at the holdfasts, Jon answered. We can't assume gaps our chance. Scouts could circle behind. Then move faster, Arya said, slipping past to take point. He watched the muscles at her jaw flex. Guilt still gnawed, though none blamed her for the dagger that had slipped. Jon Concy, deared reminding her of what Bran once told him. That choice and consequence coiled together like clutching vines. But Arya's shoulders set, and he held his tongue. Some wounds must close from within. Grey worms signaled a rest halt near dusk where the road swung west along a frozen brook. They crouched beneath a leaning boulder streaked with veins of iron-bound quartz, its overhang sheltering them from wind. Brienne and Podrick stood sentry. Davos and Gendry sawed strips from the venison haunch, passing morsels down the line. Sam shared what remained of the oats among the children and elders. Gilly, baby Sam, two small wildling twins whose mother had perished in the crypts, and an aging steward named Hobb who had refused to leave Winterfell until forced. Each accepted their ration without complaint. Hunger, like fear, had become habit. Sansa lowered herself onto a slab beside Daenerys, the queen in exile, so Jon now thought of her. Stared at the wrapped sapling upon her lap, thumb stroking leaves dimmed to a weary olive. Every so often she closed her eyes and exhaled, as though willing warmth into those frail veins. Sansa watched silently until Daenerys murmured, "It drinks little light here. I fear it will wither before we reach any harbor." "It survived stone and darkness," Sansa replied softly. "So will we." The two women, once rivals across culture and creed, shared a long look that held no grace but mutual resolve. Grief had scoured away lesser sentiments. Jon finished chewing a strip of venison grown tasteless in his mouth, then rose to scout. Ghost followed, paws silent. They skirted the brook's edge where ice cracked gunshot loud beneath the current. Jon paused at a tree carved with a flayed man sigil, old Bolton waymarker half erased by sap seep. Beneath it lay the corpses of two men, a Karstark and a Bolton retainer, throats slit, dragonglass daggers still embedded. The white fog of undeath had not touched them. Chests bore fresh wounds. Jon knelt, gloved fingers brushing their cheeks. Still warm, he glanced upslope. No prince led away, whoever had struck moved like whispers. He remembered Tormund's promise to harry the dead and wondered whether free folk blades had forestalled new wights. A raven landed on the Bolton marker, wings ruffling. Eyes glinted black glass. Jon met its stare and felt, for an instant, the sense of being watched from inside that feathered skull. Bran, or something of him, perched there. Jon whispered, "We head for White Harbor. If you know another path, guide us." The raven croaked and took flight, circling once before banking south. Jon exhaled, uncertain if request had been understood. Night descended. They resumed march beneath a sky grated with cloud. No moon guided them. Only the faint aurora flickered turquoise above northern peaks, a ghostly reflection of undead eyes. Near midnight, the King's Road dipped into low marsh where reeds rattled like bones. Mist pooled, swirling around ankles. Sam muttered prayers, clutching dragonglass torch stub. Gendry's hammer occasionally knocked a stone, the clang echoing too loud. Davos hissed caution each time. Halfway through the marsh, Ghost halted, ears pricked. Jon froze. Ahead, silhouettes ambled across the road. 5 figures, jerky and stiff, whites, but their posture seemed odd. Arms hung unnaturally long, faces hidden by reed cluster. Jon crept closer. When wind parted the mist, the truth became clear. These were scarecrows fashioned from butchered elk, dressed in tatters, each bearing a frost-gutted lantern. A crude sign hung from a pole. "Turn back, icy bastards." Free folk handiwork, Jon realized, meant to distract or delay the dead. Beyond the decoys lay a field of pits, each camouflaged under frost-coated rushes. Arya tested one with her boot. The crust broke and she glimpsed sharpened stakes below. She grinned, the first grin since Godswood. Tormund indeed left gifts. They navigated by torchlight, stepping gingerly on markers of woven grass left by free folk, and emerged onto firm ground. A campfire crackled ahead. Jon advanced alone, Longclaw lowered. Tormund Giantsbane rose from beside the flames, beard shining amber. Behind him huddled 30 wildlings, 3 giants' children in tow. A pile of white skulls formed a grisly cairn nearby. Tormund's grin split his face. Stark pup walks tall still. Good. I was about to drink wine in your memory. Jon clasped his forearm. How many dead? Too many, Tormund replied, Colossus' shoulders sagging. We felled an honor guard that scouted ahead of a larger pack. They come dawn, maybe 600, maybe more. We've set pits, snares, fire baskets. But giants of ice march with them. The traps will slow, not stop. Jon's stomach nodded. Arya had joined them, eyes flicking over Tormund's band. We can't linger, she said. We head south before first light. Tormund spat into flames. Road south is choked. Saw them moving along the Barrowlands. Dead wolves, dead men, even a dead mammoth. You'll be flanked. Better stand here and crack their skulls. Send women and children through the swamp path while we fight. We have a queen and a sapling that burns green fire, Jon answered. We need both alive, not buried under 600 corpses. The wildling scratched his beard, considering. Then we split. Free folk and unsullied rearguard strike and fall back. You lead your queen and sapling through the bog path at first gray. Once you're clear, we torch the marsh bridge behind. Grey Worm, arriving with Davos and Brienne, studied Tormund. Their eyes measured each other, 2 different worlds of discipline. Grey Worm nodded. Unsullied will hold with you. Half company, spears and shields. We fight, then retreat by signal flare. Davos sighed but offered his hand. 7 bless you, though I doubt they know your names. Tormund guffawed. They will when I'm stomping holes in their icy arses. Camp merged lines. Survivors shared salted goat from wildling packs. Unsullied sharpened obsidian spears. Arya assisted Podrick to restring a burnt longbow using wildling sinew. Gendry hammered bent shield rims straight atop a flat rock, sparks shooting skyward. Sansa helped Gilly settle the twins with hushed songs of the Rhoynar River, her voice thin yet earnest. Daenerys knelt by the sapling near the fire, coaxing its dim leaves with whispers in High Valyrian. Each man or woman found purpose. Idle thought invited despair. Near dawn, the raven returned, alighting on Jon's knee as he crouched by Ghost. Its talons pricked leather. Its beak opened but uttered no sound. Instead, Jon saw images, fleeting, dreamlike. A weirwood grove encircled by water, faces carved deep bleeding red. Pillars of green mist rising where sun should shine. A dark tower half-sunken where roots tangled stone. Then a dragon forged of night, blue hellfire shrouding a frozen moon. Jon gasped. Raven flapped off. Bran's message, if such it was, confirmed the Isle of Faces held hope while dread attacked from sky. He relayed what he could to Daenerys. Her eyes tightened, but she said, I will face my child again. Alive or dead, I must. When dull copper prelude tinted the east, they formed columns. The main contingent, Daenerys, Jon, Sansa, Arya, Sam, Gilly, babies, Podrick, Brienne, Davos, Gendry, Hobb and remaining stewards, would slip through swamp path guided by 2 wildlings carrying reed torches. Tormund and Grey Worm would command rearguard. 60 unsullied, 20 wildlings, and 3 giants' children who wielded uprooted pines as clubs. Jon clasped Tormund at leave-taking. Your song will be sung. I prefer ale, the big man chuckled. But sing loud if I fall. Arya hugged Tormund's waist. She looked miniature but fierce. Don't die yet. I owe you stories. Keep them warm for me. Grey Worm saluted. On signal, he produced a clay pot filled with pitch, fixed to arrow shaft. Davos would fire it once main group crossed western ridgeline. They parted. Dawn lightened fog to dull silver as Jon's column descended into reeds. The brook gurgled under footboards free folk had rigged. Mist swallowed them within yards, dampening sound, numbing fingers. Baby Sam whimpered. Gilly hummed. Sansa squeezed Arya's hand for calm she herself needed. Jon walked beside Daenerys, who cradled the sapling inside her cloak, its leaves dim but pulsing like a heart. Behind, drums sounded, giant palms pounding shields. Echo bled across marsh.
Jon quickened pace.
Fog thickened. He counted breaths. At 50 he heard first shrieks, high, warbling, inhuman. Metal clanged, wood splintered, a distant roar of giant children answering. The battle had begun. Footing grew treacherous. Boardwalks narrowed to single plank. One steward slipped, plunging thigh-deep into frigid water. Brienne hauled him out, but his soaked breeches froze stiff. They pressed on. Reeds parted before them, revealing a low rise crowned by boulders. Davos climbed first, bow drawn, and peeked over crest. He waved clear. They scrambled up. From ridge top they saw the marsh stretching back. In dawn gloom, pockets of fire dotted the landscape. Unsullied torch lines, wildlings hurling burning pitch. Whites swarmed, silhouettes thrashing like an overturned anthill. Glints of blue flame, ice javelins, arced toward giant children battering dead mammoths with tree clubs. One giant fell, chest impaled, howl echoing until drowned by white tide. It was too far for help. Davos set flaming arrow to bowstring. He loosed. The pitch-pot sword then burst midair, showering sparks. It was the signal to fall back. Even as he lowered bow, a shadow blotted sunrise in the north. Wings vast, span blocking cloud. Undead Drogon descended, scales rhymed, ribs glowing cerulean like furnace bars. Blue flames spilled from his jaws. Liquid winter that ignited nothing yet froze anything living. A single blast swept across marsh, extinguishing pitch fires, turning reed and white alike to crystalline sculptures that shattered beneath incoming hordes. Jon's heart lurched. Daenerys swayed, knees buckling. Brienne and Gendry steadied her. "We keep moving," Jon said, though his voice trembled. "Speed now." They plunged onward, down the ridge into tangled forest where bog gave way to fir-root ground. Birds fled overhead, their cries frantic. The sapling against Daenerys's chest warmed, leaves fluttering. She whispered to it, and warmth spread outward. Those touching her shoulder felt it. The group quickened. Behind, horns sounded, not living horns. A mournful note of ice that cracked branches. Jon glimpsed movement. Pale figures sprinting through trees, an advance pack that had broken from main horde. Whites fast as living men, guided perhaps by White Walker's stride. He counted maybe 40. "Form wedge," Brienne barked. Unsullied of vanguard pivoted shields, but these were only 12. The rest fought in marsh. Podrick knocked arrows. Arya readied dragonglass knives between fingers. Battle met them beneath ancient pines. Whites leapt onto shield wall, claws scrabbling.
Gendres kemer palpt skal. Some stepped downward.
Jon and Arya darted flanks, severing necks, but more emerged. A White Walker on pale stallion, spear of ice leveled. Its presence chilled breath to rhyme. Jon lunged, long claw ringing. The Walker parried with inhuman strength, sending vibrations up Jon's arm. Behind him, Arya vaulted off a trunk, targeting Walker's flank. It twitched, deflecting with minimal motion, turning to skewer her. She twisted, blade pupil black slicing across its thigh. No wound. Armor of enchanted ice repelled dragonglass like wood. Only Valyrian could cut. Jon pressed, feint high, slice low. The Walker thrust. Long claw met spear midshaft. Ice cracked. A fragment splintered. The Walker hissed, first sound Jon heard from those beings. Seizing moment, Daenerys stepped forward, holding sapling aloft. Leaves flared viridian, casting green sheen. The Walker recoiled. Jon slipped inside guard and sheared its head. Armor shards exploded. Walker shattered to snow. Instantly whites within 20 strides collapsed. Breathing hard, Jon looked back. Davos, Brienne, and Sam slew remaining stragglers. Only 2 shield bearers fell. Podrick knelt by one, eyes wet. Arya approached Daenerys, touching sapling leaves. "Keep that alive," she said in hoarse gratitude, the respite brief. In northern sky, blue dragonfire traced fiery sigil, herding retreating rearguard toward forest where no traps waited. Grey worm's horns answered 3 blasts, emergency rally. Jon cursed, "They're being driven onto us." Tormund burst from tree line minutes later, blood covering him. A jagged icicle lodged through bicep. Behind limped 40 unsullied, shields cracked, spears spent. Giant child Hroth limped last, right arm missing below elbow but still clutching trunk club in left. "Ice lizard drove us like sheep," Tormund panted. Spewed cold flame. Giants froze like river stones, then shattered. Grey worm staggered beside him, helmet gone, face slick with sweat. "We cannot hold again. Need open ground." He pointed southeast. "Old watchtower at Lichfield Rise. Stone walls, 1 gate. We defend until night." Jon consulted Davos, who nodded. "Better fortress than forest ambush. From there we're 2 leagues to White Knife Bluff. If we hold tower, scouts can reach harbor." Daenerys looked skyward, jaw set. "And Drogon, let me worry for my child," Jon said, surprising himself. She studied him, perhaps hearing love still unspoken. She bowed her head once. They moved southeast at a trot. Lichfield Rise revealed itself as a hill crowned by crumbling square keep built in days of First Men, later used as signal tower by Karstarks. Approach path wound between boulders like giants' teeth. Wildlings had visited recently, fresh prints, caches of pitch jugs. Tormund grunted approval. "My lads ran supply line last moon. Never thought I'd thank their laziness for leaving barrels behind." Inside tower courtyard they arranged defenses. Gendry and Podrick barred oak gate with fallen lintel. Unsullied stacked debris along inner walls, creating firing ledges. Arya climbed spiral stair to roof, posting as spotter. Sam discovered a dusty storeroom holding racks of rusted corals and 3 crossbows still sound. He passed them to Podrick and Brienne. Davos found a half-collapsed cellar with ancient jars of lamp oil. They hauled them to battlements, fuses pre-tied. Sun climbed weakly, a disk of pale iron. With each minute, tension ratcheted. Jon paced parapet. Finally Arya's call came. North slope. Blue glint preceded wave of whites cresting ridge, more than he'd ever seen outside Winterfell's field. Mammoth skeletons draped in chains, wolves bleached white, men in patchwork armor. At center rode 3 white walkers, lances scanning. Above them circled Drogon, jaws steaming blue. Arya loosed first flaming arrow, striking oil jug 30 paces beyond gate, lighting ground.
Unsullied valid javelins. Dragonglass tips veld van Gaar.
But horde pressed around flames like tide around rock. Mammoth skeleton crashed through pyre, bones ablaze but continuing. Slammed gate. Oak groaned. "Pitch!" Davos shouted. Gendry and wildling twins tipped cauldron over wall. Boiling oil gushed, igniting on contact with blue fire arrow Podrick fired. Whites burned screaming, yet kept clawing, smearing viscous tar like scorching paint that set others alight in chain reaction. Jon watched in horror as undead burst yet still moved, unstoppable. The sapling pulsed. Daenerys felt it, turned to Jon with desperate eyes. "It wants to burn them," she said, "but I fear its life." Jon considered. If tower falls, sapling dies anyway. He helped her atop central parapet. She held it high. Leaves blazed emerald again, brighter than sun. Heat radiated, a cleansing warmth. She chanted Dracary's Vyres, the words of fire. Green wildfire roared outward in concentric ring, spilling over battlements, washing whites in liquid jade that clung to bone and ice alike. White walkers screeched as armor melted. One disintegrated before could raise spear. Mammoth skeleton collapsed, ribs exploding into shower of sparks. For heartbeat Jon believed victory near. Then shadow eclipsed all. Drogon dived, blue flame pouring. It met green in midair. Colors clashed, swirling storm that hissed, steam erupting. Wildfire hissed then guttered where blue consumed oxygen with unnatural cold. Saplings' leaves dimmed, edges crisping brown. Daenerys cried out, hugging it to chest, shielding with her body. Jon pulled her back. His cloak froze rigid in blast's fringe. Frost-coated battlements extinguishing torches. Gates splintered inward. White's flooded courtyard. Unsullied locked shields, spears stabbing. Grey Worm fought front rank, but numbers rolled over defense like breakers. Giant Child Hroth roared, stomping clusters, yet blue flame raked across his torso. He froze mid-swing, expression sorrowful before shattering. Brienne shouted for fallback to keep interior. Jon grabbed Daenerys' hand, pulling toward tower core where spiral stair led to high chamber. Arya descended from roof, face laced with frost, shouting, "Dragons circling for another pass." Podrick and Gendry ushered civilians upward. Inside high chamber, arrow slits leaked pale light. Sam, sweating, rifled parchments. Ancient raven registers, lichen-eaten scrolls. He muttered, "Need something, anything." Footsteps thundered below. Whites storming lower halls. Brienne and Grey Worm fought to stall. Arya barred door with iron bar. "We're trapped," Sansa whispered, face white. Daenerys knelt, sapling in arms. Only 2 leaves glowed faintly now. "I have one more breath of fire," she said quietly. "But it will take the sapling's life, and maybe mine." Jon squatted before her. "We won't trade your life." He looked around chamber. 8 stout wooden beams supported stone vault overhead. Oil jars lined shelves. Idea sparked. "We can collapse the tower, bury ourselves and them." A tomb of dragonglass rubble. He met every gaze. Some horrified, others resigned. Davos spoke first. "We lived to save the realm, not ourselves. If falling this tower cripples their vanguard, so be it." Gilly clutched baby Sam, tears silent, but she lifted chin. "We do what we must so he can grow." Sansa stepped to Jon, touching his cheek. "House Stark began here in stone and ice. Let it shelter the living one last time." Daenerys breathed, gaze shifting to small folk faces. She nodded, unwinding cloth from sapling roots. "Then its last flame must be our fuse." Arya and Gendry soaked beams with lamp oil. Podrick appended jars along walls. Sam carved glyphs into floor. Runic patterns gleamed from scroll. Fire cannot kill the living, only the dead. He could not swear to translation, but hope flickered. Grey Worm and Brienne fell back, sealing chamber door. Groan of white horde rose just beyond. Jon helped Daenerys stand, sapling pressed against central pillar. She whispered tender farewells in Valyrian, to Rhaegal, to Drogon, to children unhatched. Then she kissed Jon, salt, frost, ash mingled. She pulled away and exhaled across leaves. Green fire bloomed, spiraling like serpent around roots, racing along oil-soaked beams. Flames licked ceiling, heat intense yet gentle on skin. Jon shepherded survivors to corner alcove beneath stone lintel. Ghost pressed at his side, hackles silent finally. Brienne shielded Sansa. Davos held Podrick and twins. Grey Worm braced spear to ceiling, as if to bear weight himself. A thunderous crack reverberated. Tower stones glowed emerald where fire seeped into mortar. Floor lurched, dust rained. Below, whites shrieked, their icy shrill cut short as structure failed. Blue flame burst through door, swallowed by green, too primordial. Forces warring again, yet this time enclosed. Ceiling groaned louder than siege drums. Jon locked eyes with Daenerys. She smiled, serene. The sapling burned white-hot in her grasp, trunk splitting to reveal core of ruby flame. Everything imploded inward. Jon felt air ripped from lungs. Heat and cold collided in shockwave beyond sensation. He flung arms over Daenerys and Arya, darkness folding them in stone womb. Silence, time uncertain. Then sound returned. Trickle of dust, distant crackle. Jon's body ached, weight pressed chest. He pried eyes open. Faint green glow haloed broken arch overhead. Rubble piled, but air pocket remained. He coughed, voice echoing. "Daenerys!" She stirred beneath his arm, alive. Sapling a blackened husk, but embers still burned in heartwood. Others responded, Brienne groaning, Podrick cursing softly, Davos muttering prayers, Sam wheezing. Sansa cried names until each answered.
No Wictrix.
Jon groped for Longclaw, blade dim yet intact. Arya located Dragonglass dagger. They crawled toward Shaft of Daylight where wall had fractured outward. Pushing stones, they emerged onto hillside slope of shattered granite. Tower reduced to jagged stump. Smoke drifted from ruins tinted blue-green. Glassy shards littered ground. Bodies of wights lay motionless. Ice armor melted, pieces strewn. No movement. Above, sky clear, morning sun finally pierced clouds. Rich gold. No sign of undead dragon. Jon helped Daenerys stand. She swayed but nodded, alive. Tormund's shout carried from Treeline. He and half-dozen wildlings limped forward, faces soot-black, but alive. Went to hell and back, we did. He laughed hoarsely when he saw survivors. Grey Worm surveyed devastation. Vanguard destroyed, he stated. But not army. Night King will come. Davos shaded eyes south. White Knife is a day's march. If this doesn't slow him, nothing will. We move. They buried those lost. 7 unsullied, 3 stewards, 1 wildling child. Beneath cairn of rocks warmed by sun, marking with wolf sigil scratched upon stone. Daenerys placed charred sapling husk at cairn top. Tiny coil of smoke drifted skyward, twisting like dragon's last breath. Sam pressed coin of dragonglass into each mound. Payment no shadow beyond would dare deny. As they set off, a raven descended, perching on Jon's shoulder. In its beak, a sprig of weirwood leaf still red. He took it gently. Bran's sign. Life persists. He tucked leaf into husk of sapling at cairn. Green flicker sparked then died, sleeping until dawn anew. They walked south under hardening resolve, feet bleeding, hearts alight. Behind them tower ruins smoldered, last ward of the north. Ahead, White Harbor's hope beckoned. Ships, river, Isle of Faces, destiny. And above distant peaks, wings of ice beat, carrying winter and death. But within each survivor's chest burned memory of green flame that had once devoured cold, and would again. Snow thickened into a grinding blizzard before midday, swallowing the ruins of Lichfield Rise behind a whirling curtain of white. The survivors pressed onward, hooded heads bowed, half blind to anything beyond the next drifting shape of a tree or the faint gray smear of the king's road underfoot. Frost rattled armor joints, and linen bindings grew stiff with rime until every movement scraped like rusted hinges. They advanced one laborious step at a time, guided by Tormund's bellowed warnings of hidden ditches and gray worms clipped orders that kept their dwindling column from scattering into the storm. Brienne marched flank with Podrick and Gendry, shields raised against slicing wind. Behind them Davos muttered filthy prayers to every god he could name, each curse a puff of steam torn from his beard. Jon walked at the head, ghost trotting close as white within white, barely discernible. The direwolf's muzzle tilted sideways intermittently, scenting air laden with ice and decay. Jon's ribs ached from frostbite that had set in during the tower's collapse, but he ignored the pain, focusing instead on the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, step, count, glance back, ensuring Daenerys, Sam, Gilly, the children, and Sansa still followed. Arya darted ahead now and again, her silhouette wraith-slender when she slipped between fir trunks to scout for danger, returning wordlessly with a shake of her head. No whites yet. The sapling's charred husk, strapped in a reed sling across Daenerys's back, pulsed weak embers that warmed the skin directly beneath but nowhere else. When the gale howled hardest, she would tighten the sling as if to shield it against the furious cold. Each time she did, Jon's chest clenched, noticing her fingers raw and bleeding around the knuckles. She would not let him dress the wounds, answering his concern with a curt, "Later, we all bleed." Just beyond the forest's edge lay open moorland covered by drifts. There, the King's Road slanted toward the chalk cliffs that overlooked the White Knife's frozen course. Somewhere below those heights White Harbor waited, if indeed it stood. Rumors had flown among Tormund's wildlings that the port city had evacuated small folk inland when word of Winterfell's fall first reached them, leaving only Lady Willa Manderly's garrison to hold the walls. Whether ships still rode anchor in the estuary, none could say. By late afternoon, the storm slackened enough that silhouettes of distant hillocks emerged. Arya, returning from a forward sweep, reported an overhanging canyon to the east. "Shelter enough for a quick fire," she said. "I found half-buried stores of pitch and arrow shafts, wildling caches again. Likely part of Tormund's line." They veered from the road, trudging upslope through drifts that swallowed calves. Snow in the air broke into fat flakes, drifting lazily as the wind quieted. The canyon mouth yawned like a jagged wound, its basalt walls scoured by centuries. Icicles crooked as daggers hung low. Some snapped free at the heat of their torches, shattering at their feet in tinkling shards. Inside they found a half-collapsed salt kiln once used by Karstark hunters. The roof timbers lay in splinters, but 3 stone walls still stood, offering respite from the wind. Davos declared a halt. Wildlings scraped snow to clear a patch of bare earth, and Gendry arranged stones into a shallow pit. Sam produced flint and struck sparks onto pine shavings. Arya coaxed the flame, hands surprisingly steady despite exhaustion. Soon a small fire crackled, smoke curling up to vanish among icicles far above. Huddled around that scant warmth, the group took stock of wounds. Gray worms left arm bled where an ice spear grazed muscle. Gilly sowed the tear while baby Sam whimpered at blood scent. Podrick's thigh bruise had flowered purple. Sansa tore linen from her underskirt to bind it. Tormund, nursing his pierced bicep, laughed off Davos's suggestion of a poultice, claiming northern air would cure him faster than any Neeler witch paste. But when the old smuggler pressed a medicated cloth, the giant did not protest. Food stores sat at a grim tally. 3 skeins of oats, 2 wheels of hard cheese nearly frozen, a burlap pouch of dried berries, and the last of the venison strips. Davos dolled out meager portions, enough to dull hunger, not sate it. Even the children chewed in silence. Jon shifted to the fire's edge, scanning the entrance. He sensed weight in the hush, the pregnant pause of a world holding breath. Somewhere beyond the rolling moor, undead hordes marched. Yet the blizzard's veil and the tower's fiery collapse seemed to grant them fleeting grace. He tried to savor it, but dread coiled deeper each second. Daenerys joined him, cloak drawn tight. Ash smudged her cheeks, and her silvery hair was dulled to pewter. She lowered herself beside him, elbows on knees. Flames reflected in her eyes. "The sapling grows colder," she whispered. "No matter how near I hold it." He reached, touching her sleeve. "It may need to be planted soon." Bran's dream showed islands where weirwoods thrive. Her gaze flicked sideways. "Do we trust dreams? I trusted prophecies once. They burned my world." Jon exhaled, watching breath drift upward. "I trust Bran, or whatever part of him still guides us." Silence. Then she asked something unexpected. "If we reach White Harbor, and there are ships, will you sail with me?" His answer came without thought. "Wherever the fight leads." She smiled, a ghost of earlier, before the long night, then straightened as Grey Worm approached. The captain's face was drawn but resolute. He reported unsullied scouts had ranged perimeter. No patrols of dead within bowshot. Footprints vanish north. Perhaps they circle. Tormund huffed. "They circle like wolves till they smell weakness. Trust me, they'll pounce once dark falls." Jon considered the canyon. Good walls, narrow entrances, vantage points above. "We could hold here through night," he suggested, glancing to Daenerys. "Rest, then push to the cliffs with first light." Brienne objected gently. "If the Night King rides Drogon, he covers these leagues swift. A dragon sees every canyon as a hearth to roast." Unsure, Jon weighed options. Sam, overhearing, shuffled forward, scroll clasped. "I studied Karstark charters while you slept last night. There's mention of an abandoned silver mine west of here, its mouth concealed by a cascade of rock, but it tunnels beneath the cliff line, emerging half a furlong from the White Knife. If intact, It could deliver us to river unseen. Davos scratched beard. Miners dig deep. Whites sniff living blood, but cannot smell rock. Tormund shrugged. I'd rather fight under sky than crawl like moles. But I'll not naysay the Maester boy's learning. Silver Mine might hide us from dragon's eyes. Decision hung until Daenerys rested a hand on Jon's forearm. We go underground, she said. Wings of ice own the sky. No one dissented. Sam traced map points on ground. Mouth lies 2 miles west. Near a granite spine locals call the Widow's Fingers. They doused fire with snow, scattering ash to cloak scent, then filed out. Afternoon sun. Pale, brittle, shone through thinning cloud, turning snow crystals to diamonds underfoot. Arya led, flanked by Ghost and 2 wildlings. Tormund's band formed rearguard with Unsullied. By twilight, they reached the Widow's Fingers. 3 narrow pillars of stone protruding from a drift-mounted ridge. Between them sagged a tumble of scree half buried in snow. Sam insisted the mine mouth lay behind. Gendry lent brute strength, rolling aside rimed boulders until a black maw appeared. An exhalation of stale air wafted. Damp, metallic, dead. They lit 2 lanterns, shielded the glow, and descended. Tunnel walls shimmered where frost met veins of argent ore. Trickles of meltwater traced grooves in rock, echoing like distant tears. Ceiling low at first forced them to stoop until the passage widened into a vaulted gallery, props of rotted timber leaning drunkenly. Footing treacherous with broken rail ties from vanished or carts.
Jon's gut knottet.
In such confines, one breach could entomb them, but forward meant hope. They wound deeper, torchlight competing with bioluminescent lichen casting sickly green glow. Baby Sam giggled at motes of light. Tension eased momentarily. Several hundred paces later, the gallery forked. Left slope down, right up. Sam recalled text. Follow upward tunnel to vent shaft that opens near riverbank. They took right. The incline steepened, forcing climbs over rubble slides. Twice, Arya scouted ahead only to report collapsed passages. Each detour cost precious time. Hours passed. Breath plumed heavier. Muscles burned. Brienne silently recited the names of those left behind, each syllable granting strength. Sansa repeated prayers to the old gods and the new. Grey Worm marched with jaw clenched until sudden scraping echoed from behind. Jon lifted fist, halt. From darkness, faint clatter of stone. Tormund spun, hefting axe. Silence returned. They moved again. Minutes later, heavier scrape, closer. Arya slipped to rear beside wildlings. Lantern light showed nothing but swirling dust. Then a whisper like ice sliding across glass. A white, no, too soft. Jon motioned Davos to raise lantern high. The beam caught movement overhead. Webs of argent glimmer swayed. Something pale flexed, thin, elongated. Dozens more shapes unfolded. Pale bats? Gilly stifled scream as one dropped, landing on Jon's shoulder. It was skeletal, insectoid, fashioned of calcified chitin, with empty eye pits and jagged mandibles. Sam gasped, naming them shardlings. The miners wrote of them. Creatures born of cold veins, they feed on warmth. The cavern ceiling came alive. Shardlings unhooked themselves, swarming, each about the size of a man's hand, wings serrated, legs needle-sharp. They poured down. Steel rang as Unsullied slashed, but broken bodies reknit, bones magnetized to reform. Podrick batted a cluster aside, but one latched onto his forearm, talons piercing leather, sucking heat. He yelped. Brienne sliced it free. Arya hurled dragonglass knives. Contact made creatures burst into snow dust.
Sam realized vulnerability.
He shouted, "Dragonglass!" Knives and shattered spearheads became weapons. Wildlings smashed gemmed shards with hammers, dusting shardlings until the swarm dissipated like extinguished sparks. In minutes, only powdery snowflakes drifted, but the noise had reverberated down halls. An eerie hush followed, a hush pregnant with approaching doom. They pressed on, urgency renewed. Finally, a slit of moonlight appeared ahead, filtered by bars of iron lattice. An old miner's great ceiling vent shaft. Hope surged. Gendry swung hammer, battering rusted frame until bolts gave, iron screeched aside, and winter air flooded. They crawled into a shallow ravine open to night. The white knife lay below, half frozen, its surface a patchwork of steel water and black ice. Across river lights flickered, torches along White Harbor's distant wall. The port still stood. Relief swept survivors like thaw wind. Yet between them and refuge stretched a mile of river and open terrain, and the undead could not be far. Grey Worm organized crossing. Wildlings to fell pine trunks into temporary bridges across narrower ice channels. Unsullied to guard flanks. Sailors among Davos's smuggler routes to evaluate current. Gendry and Podrick hacked branches, forging crude sleds for children and wounded. Ghost-padded riverbank sniffing for threats. Jon and Daenerys stole moment alone atop knoll. They watched harbor lights quiver. Water sniffed their boots. Starlight cast shimmering roads over current. She spoke first, voice husky. I dreamed last night of Dragonstone, my feet on warm black sand. Drogon wheeling above in red skies free of snow. I woke, remembering only cold. He touched her hand, thumb brushing cracked knuckles. We'll see warm shores again. Her laugh brittle. If I must choose between throne of ash and life of this cold, I will burn every crown. But my people who follow me now, ragged survivors, the realm will follow proof of hope. He indicated sapling husk. This carries dawn in its roots. She regarded the blackened wood. It called wild green fire once. It can again. And your blood still sings with dragon heat, he said. Drogon can be freed if we sever the Night King. Resolve ignited behind her eyes. She turned to downhill bustle. Then we reach the Isle, gather magic older than his ice, and strike hard enough to rip the cold from the sky. Work on river crossing continued through darkest hours. Arya scouted upstream, finding a strait between ice flows, where current weak. They dragged felled trunks into place. Lashing with rope gleaned from mine hoists. By dawn's pale orange, footbridge span channel. Unsullied crossed first, forming perimeter on opposite bank. Spears angled outward. Wildlings ferried sleds. Mid-crossing, a cold roar rolled from north. Sky blackened beyond trees. Jon turned, heart plunging. Drogon, leathery wings thunderous, soared above forest line trailing sapphire fire. Undead outriders below poured from hills, thousands. Blue eyes glinted like scattered mica across snow. Horns blared, ice horns unnatural. Across now, Grey Worm shouted. Columns surged. Arya ran light as fox carrying baby Sam. Gilly followed. Sansa gripped Brienne's elbow. Jon and Daenerys last, ghost circling. Drogon angled into dive. Gendry paused midspan, hefting hammer. Bridge goes when Queen clears, he roared to Podrick. They had rigged ropes with pitch-soaked rags. Davos waited torch in hand. Undead arrow volleys sliced air. Bolts of bone tipped with obsidian ice. 2 wildlings fell. One struck Jon's shoulder, ricocheting off pauldron but numbing arm. He pushed Daenerys before him. She reached far bank. Sam and Davos hauled her over final beam. Jon followed, ghost leaping across. Behind, Gendry swung hammer, severing support ropes while Podrick cut others. Davos touched flame to rag. Pitch ignited. Bridge groaned. Drogon unleashed torrent. Blue fire smashed into collapsing span. Instant, water and ice exploded into steam and shards. Gendry and Podrick hurled themselves forward. Brienne caught Podrick's wrist. Tormund seized Gendry's belt. River swallowed remains. An ice wall jutted as blue flame froze churn. But undead on North Bank screeched frustration. Path cut. South Bank defenders retreated into Reed Marsh. Grey Worm led them along shore to narrow channel where ice enough to step across. Jon looked back. Drogon wheeled, but rather than pursue, he banked to lead undead west toward fords. Night King perhaps sought alternate crossing. Delay bought precious hours. They crested ridge overlooking White Harbor's outer farms. Fields lay barren, but walls of Newcastle were lit with beacons.
Trumpets rang.
A patrol galloped forth. 10 Manderley riders in green and white, led by Lady Willa herself. Bareheaded, cheeks reddened from frost, sword at hip. She reined to stop yards away, blue cloak snapping. "By the Seven and the old Lord Snow, you look like whites yourselves," she greeted, scanning ragtag host. Jon bowed stiffly. "Winterfell has fallen. Night King commands Drogon. We need ships." Shock flickered before iron composure. She gestured them inside. "We evacuated civilians up the neck. Remain only archers and sailors readying to sail south. Lord Manderley holds the primary fleet near Maidenpool. But 12 cogs and my flagship, the White Hope, await tide." Daenerys stepped forward. "We must reach the Isle of Faces with all haste. Do you swear ships?" Willa studied Queen's soiled cuirass and charred bundle. "My oath to the north binds me. We sail tonight, once provisions loaded." Inside walls, White Harbor's quays bustled. Sailors rolling barrels, blacksmiths hammering final rivets. Ships bobbed in gray swell, rigging lamenting wind. Survivors found refuge in granaries and barracks. Hot broth revived them, wounds cleaned. Sam collapsed on cot, dreamless. Jon convened council in candlelit chart room aboard White Hope. Present: Daenerys, Willa, Davos, Grey Worm, Sam, Brienne, Arya, Tormund, Gendry, Sansa. Map of Westeros atop oak table. Jon addressed them. "Night King gathers dead at river. Once ice thick, he crosses. Our only chance. Reach Isle, learn magic strong enough to break Dragon's bind and end him." Sam laid aged parchment. Drawing of Isle Grove, surrounded by green men guardians, stronghold of children's rituals. "We must gain their blessing. They may not welcome men with steel." Arya tapped dagger tip on map. "Then send me first. Shadows speak to shadows." Daenerys said, "This cannot rest on one blade. We go together." Plan formed. White Hope and 3 escorts sail down Bight into narrow sea. Slip up mouth. Of Trident under cover of night. Smaller river skiffs carry landing party through God's Eye Lake mists to Isle. Meanwhile, Lady Willa leads main fleet south to evacuate Riverland's towns, hindering dead. Grey Worm commands Marines to defend lake shores. Preparations whirlwind. By dusk, survivors boarded. Daenerys stood at prow, wind catching hair, eyes fixed south. Sapling husk secured in watertight chest lined with warm fleece, glowing faint saffron now, though burnt. Perhaps it sensed gentler climate. Sail unfurled. Harbor bells told farewell. Snow tapered as they cleared breakwater. Sea opened black and heaving. Stars wheeled overhead, unclouded for first time in weeks. Tormund leaned on rail, marveling. "Never been on water bigger than Long Lake," he rumbled. "Feels like falling into sky." Jon scanned horizon. North, faint aurora shimmered, curtain of icy fire marking undead presence. South, dark awaited. He exhaled, tasting salt instead of blood for first time since Winterfell. But weight on shoulders remained, the crown of a fight not yet won. Storm weeks hammered them along eastern coast. White Hope's timbers moaned, but Willa's sailors proved cunning. They skirted shoals, hid by day in coves to avoid enemy scouting. Though none came, ravens told word the seas were eerily empty. Perhaps Night King's power faltered over water, or he relied solely on land march. One moon dark, they anchored near Sisterton for water. Arya slipped ashore to scout. She returned with grim tidings. Town deserted, gates smashed, houses ransacked. Blue footprints in mud. Dead had passed days earlier. They sailed before dawn, hearts heavy. Days blurred. Sam studied scrolls by lantern, deciphering children's glyphs. He believed roots of Isle Weirwoods formed vast net that stored echoes of every soul touched by old magic. "Bran may live within," he said to Jon one night. "If we bring the sapling, perhaps they can birth new life, weapon forged of memory and fire." Meanwhile, Daenerys tempered steel with blacksmiths. forging slender spears tipped with dragonglass arrowheads fused to Valyrian steel shards. Gendry's handiwork, baptized shadowlances. She drilled unsullied and wildlings in throwing lines until shoulders bled. "One strike," she repeated. "Pierce the Night King's heart, free Drogon, shatter armies." Tormund trained Giant's children survivors, two left, Brock and Lyra, in hurling ballista bolts by hand. Brienne schooled Podrick and Sansa in shield wall tactics for last-stand contingencies. Sansa, to everyone's surprise, proved natural commander, voice calm, instructions precise. Weeks later, sails of King's Landing merchantmen appeared on horizon, flotilla bearing refugees. Their captains hailed White Hope, recounting southern chaos. Drought, riots, rumors of Cersei resurrected by red priests, others of Euron's fleet ravaging stepstones. Yet no word of Night King yet south. That respite sharpened survivors' resolve. They still had head start. They entered estuary of Trident under waning crescent. Mist coiled off water. Reeds whispered. Ships anchored hidden among alder stands. Rowboats lowered. Muffled oars dipped. Lake God's Eye spread vast. Mirrored sky black slit by Silver Star Road. Arya stood on prow of lead skiff, face streaked with moonlight. Jon beside her, grip on Longclaw white. Daenerys knelt amidships near sapling chest, murmuring low. Chest began to glow green again, pulsing stronger with each stroke deeper into lake. Sam muttered prayers to all old gods. As boats neared Isle of Faces, fog thickened opaque. Torches snuffed themselves. Water lapped hulls. Then faint luminescence emerged. Rings of fireflies suspended in air. Trees loomed. Impossibly tall weirwoods, bark pale as bone, leaves crimson and emerald, trunks fused into arches forming living cathedral. Roots glowed faintly green, pulsing in unison with sapling. Landing party stepped onto moss. Silence heavy, the hush of sanctum. Brienne, unsheathing sword, nearly broke spell with rasp of steel. Arya hushed her. They advanced single file along route-bound path until clearing opened, a circle of towering weirwoods around placid pool reflecting stars. At pool's center stood figure in robes woven of leaves, antlers sprouting from brow, green man guardian. Eyes glowed verdant. Others stepped from trunks, silent. Jon stepped forward, laying Longclaw at his feet. He spoke, "We seek counsel of memory, to end winter and reclaim Dragon's heart." He explained fall of Winterfell, undead Drogon, Bran's vision, sapling's fire. When he finished, silence lingered. Then the first green man raised staff of living wood. Runes flared. In perfect common tongue he said, "The blood of first men and dragon flame mingle in your veins. The seed you bear is child of two worlds. Plant it in pool. If worthy, memory will awaken." Daenerys approached, hands shaking as she lifted charred husk. She knelt, submerged roots into water. At touch, green light blossomed outward, rippling like dawn across still surface. Leaves unfurled anew, vibrant jade. Trunk smoothed, healed. Sapling shot upward, branches twisting into spiral. Green men chanted low. Rune light intensified. Storm of images erupted in minds. Children forging dragonglass spears. Bran walking world through roots. Night King's creation at Ice Altar. Drogon hatching in fire. Arya leaping in Godswood again, success and failure branching. Jon's resurrection. Wildfire within tower. Futures branching infinite. Then all converged upon one path. Heart of Night King pierced by spear of combined power. Dragonglass and Valyrian fused, tipped with living green flame fed by dragon's breath. Vision ended. Pool now reflected not stars but swirling map of Westeros with pulsing points. One at Winterfell ruins, one moving south along King's Road, one at Isle. Green Man spoke. "You carry forge of such spear within dragon's heart and woman's fire." He gestured to Daenerys. "Let saplings flame merry Valyrian steel. Let dragon breathe life into union. Then strike heart of winter." Sam stepped forward with Shadowlance prototype. "We can adapt." But Arya's gaze fixed on Vision's memory of her failure. She clenched fists. "I will not miss twice." That night, using smithy remnants of ancient guardians, Gendry reforged Shadowlance under glow of sapling wood that burned without consuming. Valyrian shards braided around dragonglass core, tip quenched in sapling's green flame, absorbing glow until spearhead shimmered viridian. When cooled, it pulsed faint heartbeat.
Green men braided vineleater haft tinged gold.
Weight balanced like extension of arm. Meanwhile, Jon and Daenerys knelt by pool, hands entwined. Beneath water surface, reflection of Drogon flickered, blue eyes shifting to amber, flickering as if warring spirits. A whisper burned in Daenerys's mind. Her child still fought bondage. Tears slipped. She pressed palm to water. Ripples spread azure, meeting green. She promised rescue. Upon dawn they prepared departure. Green men bestowed each defender with leaf-woven circlets that shone pale light, wards against winter. Raven perched on sapling's new bough, Bran's presence confirming path. Mission clear, ride south, intercept Night King before he reached Neck. Without river freeze, he marched west circumventing White Knife. Scouts reported he was 3 days behind due to bottlenecks but gaining. Rowboats launched. As Al receded into mist, Jon stood aft, spear secure across back. Daenerys stared north. "My dragon waits," she murmured. "I feel him nearer." They rendezvoused with White Hope. Willa's captains reported undead outriders massing near Harrenhal. The castle's ruins, already haunted, now roiled with blue mists by night. Night King might pause to claim Riverland's dead before pushing south. That gave them window. Debate ensued. Sail upriver into Heart of Danger or ride overland via King's Road south of Trident to intercept. Jon favored swift river approach. Davos argued open road allowed cavalry flanks but risked civilians along holdfasts. Daenerys ended discussion. "We strike at Harrenhal. End him before more gather." Fleet jettisoned main holds, lightning draft. River currents strong. Masts lowered. Oars churned. Tormund grumbled seasickness, yet insisted on prow watch. Brienne oversaw ballista readied with dragonglass bolts. Podrick drilled crews. Grey Worm marshaled unsullied into marines. Women and children remained aboard sister ships anchored downstream for swift retreat should plan falter. Sansa took charge of evacuees, her calm voice steadying hearts. Evening 2 days later, black silhouette of Harrenhal's twisted towers rose against sunset. Walls pitted by dragonfire centuries old now rhymed with ice, spikes of crystal growing like tumors. Wind keened through broken halls. On lakeshore stood ranks of dead. Fry levies, small John Umber's giants, Karstark riders. All still as gravestones until Night King emerged atop rampart, white cloak billowing. Drogon perched behind, fettered in ice chains fused to stone. His chest glowed blue, but eyes flickered amber occasionally, struggling against control. Jon felt spearhead vibrate. Green flame licked seam lines. Metal hummed. He breathed deep. "We go now." White Hope rammed wooden pier, boarding ramp crashing down. Unsullied stormed ashore, shields locked. Wildlings howled charge around flank. Gendry and Tormund led battering into North Gate. Arya vanished into shadows, bent on silent ascent. Jon advanced with Brienne, Grey Worm, Davos. Daenerys beside, eyes fixed solely upon dragon. Battle erupted like thunder. Dragonglass arrows rained, dropping whites in heaps. White walkers strode forward, ice blades carving lines. Valyrian riposts met them. Podrick felled one with crossbow bolt dipped in sapling flame. Walker exploded into snow. Giant whites smashed through ranks. Wildlings and Unsullied combined to hamstring then spear necks. Night King watched implacable. With idle gesture he raised new fallen. Battle seesawed. Jon fought toward central stairs, but tide pressed him back. Suddenly Drogon shrieked. Arya appeared astride his neck, catspaw dagger stabbing at ice manacle pinioning wing. Blue flame roared around her, yet sapling circlet shielded. She carved, freeing segment. Night King snarled, raising hand to freeze her, but Daenerys screamed, "Now!" and hurled chain of shadow lances Gendry had prepared. Unsullied volleyed. Green-tipped spears arced. Night King pivoted, ice shards swirling to deflect. Many shattered. One penetrated cloak, grazing shoulder. He faltered. Drogon's eyes flared amber. He reared, ice chains straining. Arya slid down neck, flipping to battlement behind. She drew second dragonglass blade. Jon pushed forward, spear blazing brighter. Wind howled. Blizzard conjured by Night King to slow attackers. Brienne shielded him, but frost welded metal. Green flame melted path around spear, leaving steam footprint. Grey Worm and Davos flanked, clearing whites. At stair top, Night King descended, spear of ice crackling black lightning. Jon and Daenerys advanced side by side. Combatants circled ancient courtyard scarred by Balerian's flame ages past. Night King struck first, lightning-fast thrust at Daenerys. She leaned aside, cloak sizzling frost. Jon countered, spear tip pulsing, but icy haft parried. Shockwave flung all back. Drogon roared, unleashed blue torrent. But Arya leapt, dagger severing ice cage around jaw. Blaze turned crimson midgout, skimming Night King's cloak. He snapped retaliatory blast of cold, freezing stones. Jon spotted opening, crack where Valyrian shards earlier pierced his armor. He feinted high, Night King raised spear. Daenerys caught sun's glint of weakness. She thrust from side, drawing attention. Night King elbowed her aside, ice blade slicing shoulder. Blood splattered. She fell to knee, pain crossing face but eyes steeled. Jon channeled grief into strike. Green flame engulfed spearhead as he drove upward, burying point into exposed fissure just beneath collarbone. Impact detonated. Green wildfire surged inside Night King's chest cavity, illuminating veins of ice like glass furnace. He stared at Jon, expression unreadable, then cracks spider-webbed across body. Light spilled, flooding courtyard. An echoing scream, not human, vibrated stone. Figure shattered, exploding into cloud of snow and emerald sparks. Shockwave rolled outward, knocking all to knees. Silence fell just as undead army froze mid-motion, eyes extinguishing. Armor clattered as bodies collapsed. Sky above cleared, aurora faded. Drogon roared triumphant, chains shattering. Flame turned full crimson, scorching battlements. He spread wings wide, rising free of ice for first time since fall. Jon knelt by Daenerys, pressing cloth to shoulder wound. Her lips curved in pained smile. "My child is free." Arya approached, dripping frost, offering catspaw back to Jon. "You finished what I began." He shook head. "We all did together." Tormund stomped in, laughing thunder. "Cold gods dead. Ale for everyone." Brienne embraced Sansa amid falling snow. Grey Worm knelt beside fallen unsullied, tears freezing. Davos saluted sky. Drogon landed, lowering head so that Daenerys could touch snout. She whispered Valyrian. Dragon purred. Overhead, ravens spiraled then dispersed eastward. Perhaps Bran's spirit finally free. Sapling circlet on Jon's brow dimmed, its duty done yet alive. In distant dawn, sunlight gilded ruined towers with gold warmth first time in living memory. Winter still lay across land, but long night ended. Later, survivors gathered in great hall's shattered hearth. Fires crackled, warming stone. They shared bread and broth. Plans stirred. How to rebuild, how to bury dead, how to tell kingdoms. Jon held spear, now dull, but core flickered. Memory of flame ready should dark ever rise again. Daenerys leaned on him, weary yet radiant. "Will you stand with me when I face the south?" He met her gaze. "I stand wherever hope demands." She laughed softly. "Then perhaps there is hope yet for thrones and hearts alike." Outside, snowflakes still fell, but they sparkled, not smothered. Children of New Dawn built small cairns of ice and leaf, markers of memory, promise of spring. And high above, Drogon soared sunlit skies, free wings beating thunder of life across a world that had won its morning. The roar of victory faded slowly, as though the very air was reluctant to surrender the echoes of that impossible moment when the Night King burst apart in emerald light. Dawn's first warmth now seeped into Harrenhal's scarred courtyards, gilding puddles of half-melted ice that smoked like brewing tea. Yet the quiet that followed was not one of celebration but of ragged disbelief. For many of the living, the stillness felt fragile, a thin glass pane that might shatter should anyone breathe too hard. Jon Snow remained kneeling beside Daenerys until he felt assured that her bleeding had slowed. Sam arrived with a satchel of salves scavenged from the Manderley ship's infirmary and, while stammering apologies for the sting, pressed mastic and ground metasweet into the wound. The blood clotting beneath his fingertips looked almost black after the green conflagration, but Daenerys never flinched. Her gaze stayed fixed upon Drogon circling the broken towers in widening gyres of exhilarated freedom, red flame billowing each time he bellowed skyward. With every upstroke of those colossal wings, shattered ice chains rained shimmering splinters on the corpses below. Elsewhere in the courtyard, the Unsullied moved among the fallen, testing for breath but finding none beyond their own. The spear of wildfire-fused steel had undone the Night King's magic in an instant. Now the thousands of corpses he had commanded were nothing more than carrion weights, inert where they had toppled. Spectral blue eyes were gone, replaced by blank marbles filmed with frost. The weight of that sudden stillness pressed upon every throat, grief for comrades and wonder at their own survival in equal measure. Tormund limped toward Jon, one hand cupping a puckered burn along his jaw. He stopped with a grunt and swept a broad arm over the carnage. "Hells of the cold gods, little crow. I thought I'd wake in the great hall of my ancestors before seeing a sight like this." His laugh, though truncated by pain, was a rumble vast enough to jolt men at the parapets from their reverie. Some of those watching released their own laughter, sharp, fumbling barks, maybe hysteria, but it spread quickly until even unsullied lips twitched, embarrassed by sudden memory of mirth. Grey Worm allowed a single breath of relief before banishing it. "Commander," he addressed Jon with clipped respect, "we must burn these bodies before rot and disease claim our wounded." He knelt to collect an iron lamp fallen from a sconce, testing the oil. "And we must send ravens, if ravens still live." Sam, wiping blood on his cloak, looked up. "They live. I saw a dozen at the Isle. They followed us south. Bran may still be guiding their flight." He pointed at the spear leaning against collapsed masonry, its emerald flare dim but steady. "That should be carried by the one who wielded it. People will need to see. Proof that the nightmare is finished." Jon rose slowly, feeling the tremor in his legs. He retrieved the spear, surprised by how light it seemed now that its work was done. The haft glinted faint gold where vine leather melded to steel. He pressed the butt into the flagstones, facing the survivors clustered beyond a mound of still smoking corpses. He found no words fit for the enormity, yet silence itself felt weightier still, so he began. "The long night is broken," he said, voice hoarse, "but winter remains. We have lands to reclaim, dead to mourn, and homes to mend. Together we can." That was all he managed before emotion strangled the rest. Yet those words sufficed. A ripple of low cheers spread across the courtyard, followed by renewed purpose. Tormund organized free folk into funeral details without being asked. He stomped among giant cadavers, yanking usable wood from wagons and siege scorpions to build pyres. The Unsullied stacked white bodies in neat rows upon those timber beds. Wildling women coated them with lamp oil. The reek grew, but none voiced complaint. When the sun climbed to mid-morning height, Daenerys herself approached one of the pyres, Drogon settling behind her like a mountain of black obsidian. The dragon exhaled a ribbon of orange and gold, no longer the unnatural sapphire. Flames danced across the piled corpses, devouring them as easily as parchment. Smoke leapt upward, thick and oily. By dusk the air above Harrenhal hung in a heat-hazed pall, trailing south like a banner of absolution. Night that followed felt almost foreign, for its darkness lacked the lurking dread of blue eyes. Lanterns shone from every rampart, but they were not the panicked beacons of a siege. Rather, They served as watchfires for the living to gather and speak softly of what dawn might bring. Kitchens scoured by decades of neglect began to yield meager dishes. Bone broth thickened with barley, charred onions dredged from collapsed gardens, the last of Lady Willa's ship's stores. Hunger made them taste near to feasts. Jon took first watch atop Heron's tower, the only vantage sturdy enough to ascend. He stood at the crumbling edge, cloak snapping in a mild easterly breeze scented faintly with ash and pine. Down below, army remnants slept in concentric rings around the largest of the weirwood-shaped pyres, as though huddled about a hearth. Ghost dozed beside the dais where the spear now rested, head pillowed on paws. The direwolf's flank rose and fell slow, untroubled. Footsteps rattled rubble behind him.
Arya Marja, Noela.
Onger wearing her leather mask of relentless vigil. Exhaustion lined her brow, but her eyes held quiet triumph. She leaned on the parapet, gazing north where aurora no longer scarred the horizon. "I liked it better when your hair had silver in it," she said after silence. Flicking speck of ash from Jon's collar, he huffed a contained laugh. "Give me a month. The white will return. I'd rather not give you a month if it means new battles." Her fingers traced mortar between stones. "But there will be more, won't there?" Jon followed her gaze to the southern road where distant campfires flickered. An encamped Lannister patrol perhaps, or river lords driven south by rumor. The dead may be gone, but the living have long memories. We slew the Night King. Some will call us heroes, others threats. Arya's expression hardened. "Let them try their threats on me." She flexed wrist where Catspaw dagger once lay, now returned to sheath at her belt. South has always feared northern power. Jon wondered at her future. "What will you do with yours?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "I may sail east, see what's west of sunset, chase legends. I haven't decided, but first." She threw him a glance softened by the rare vulnerability of childhood remembered. "I wanted to thank you for trusting me. Back at Winterfell. I failed him, Jon, and I thought I'd never regain that chance." "You bought us time," he answered. "Without that, none of this happens." He pulled her into a hug that felt momentarily awkward. She stiffened, unused to such gestures. But then she melted, shoulders trembling with unspent grief. A single tear soaked into his surcoat. She brushed it away quickly and stepped back. "I'm going to check the perimeter," she muttered. And in less than a blink she was gone into shadows. 3 days the survivors lingered in Harrenhal. 3 days spent burning the undead, burying their own, and stripping still sharp weapons from brittle hands now harmless. Gendry led small teams into the forges beneath the Great Keep, a warren of half-collapsed tunnels where dragonfire centuries old had warped anvils into grotesque sculptures. There he discovered unspoiled bars of raw Valyrian steel, likely plunder taken by Heron the Black from doomed Valyria before his fall. Bent but unbroken, the bars now lay fused to slag. Yet Gendry vowed to reheat and draw them anew once proper workshops could be secured. For now, he hammered crude edges onto spare blades, forging serviceable swords faster than any smith Davos had known. On the 4th dawn, a raven arrived, feathers mottled with green lichen, one of Bran's messengers. It settled on the spear's shaft, head tilting until Jon approached to untie the tiny scroll. The writing was unmistakably Bran's. "Eyes south. Wolves answer hawks at Riverrun. Tully banners hold but need the fire." No signature beyond the raven sigil he often sketched as a child. Bran was alive, somewhere in those deep roots of memory that span the world, and he called upon them to march. Council convened in what remained of Harrenhal's great hall. Black walls bore scalded pits where Balyrion's flame had once run molten, now shining again with fresh soot. Daenerys sat upon a makeshift throne, a simple bench covered by a tapestry showing the dance of dragons, ironic but comfortable. White Hope's captain had gifted her a cloak of dark blue trimmed with silver seawolf hide. She wore it draped to hide the fresh scar Sam continued to treat. Jon stood to her right, spear upright. Sam unfurled a map. "Riverrun lies 2 days' march if we follow the Red Fork. Scouts report an army under Lord Edmure Tully refuses Lannister rule since early rebellions. They have withstood siege by a second cousin of Lord Giles Rosby, now styling himself Warden of the Trident in Cersei's name. If Riverrun falls, the Riverlands go to whomever lifts those gates. Lannister usurpers, Ironborn Reavers, or us. Lady Willa nodded grimly. The Golden Company has landed near Crackclaw Point. They took Duskendale last week. I sailed scouts north to confirm. Their captain claims to avenge Queen Cersei's death, though some say she lives still. Tormund snorted. If she lives, she's hiding in a hole deeper than this one to avoid my axe. Grey Worm cut through the jest. Unsullied will advance east along Green Fork to flank any forces from King's Landing. Queen Daenerys and King Snow strike siege lines directly. Jon did not correct the presumption of titles. He caught Daenerys's eye. She gave tiny shrug of forbearance. Titles mattered less than deeds right now. Our goal, Jon said to council, is not thrones but stability. We cannot rebuild the north until lands south are secure. Riverrun stands for the living. Brienne placed gauntlet fist atop map. Ser Jaime swore to protect Riverrun once. If he still draws breath, he may be there, perhaps allied with Lord Edmure. Lannister divisions weaken Cersei's hold. Davos rubbed temples. Divisions aside, we march thin. Tormund's free folk number 300. Unsullied 400. Wildlings and sailors 200. Riverland levies inside those walls might add 1,000. But Golden Company marches with elephants, some say. He grimaced as if swallowed lemon. Elephants scare horses and most men. We have a dragon, Arya reminded, strolling in at last moment. I'll take Drogon over 10 elephants. Jon shook his head. Dragon or not, each time he breathes fire onto living men, we stoke fear, even among allies. We use Drogon for decisive strikes only, not terror. Daenerys' voice came soft but steel-lined. Then Drogon will shatter siege towers, not men beneath. She rose, careful of her still-mending shoulder. Make ready your columns. We leave at first light. The march to Riverrun felt surreal. Sunlight glinting off banners not weighed by frost. Fields here and there greening beneath melting snow. Willows budding fragile shoots along riverbanks. Knights of House Manderly spearheaded on borrowed Destry airs, their armor painted in fresh tide green stripes to honor both north and river. Behind, unsullied columns paced drumless but precise, shields gleaming. Wildlings trudged in looser packs, joking about goat thieving and orchard raids. Between them rode wagons laden with salvage, barrels of lamp oil, crates of obsidian arrowheads, and the precious chest containing the revived sapling, now thriving on river humidity. Its leaves unfurled daily, vivid jade. Sam tended it with the devotion of a septon. At dusk of second day, the towers of Riverrun reared from mist, ramparts dark red like congealed blood. Siege lines sprawled across the muddy meadows, a ragged ring of palisades, rams, scorpions, and tents bearing the red and gold of Lannister and the black cups of House Rosby. Fires burned. Soldiers milled in boredom rather than readiness. Jon dispatched Davos under parley flag. The smuggler approached lines with typical affable grin, requesting audience with whoever called themselves siege commander. An hour later he returned, face grave. Commander is Ser Richard Rosby, he reported. He insists Riverrun belongs to the crown he swears still sits Cersei Lannister. He demands our fealty or departure. Davos spread his hands. But he's low on rations. Half his men are Sellswords who haven't seen coin in weeks. He feared mentioning that. Willis smiled wryly. Sellswords are excellent at two things, weighing pockets and counting odds. Show them our dragon, they'll count again. Night blanketed the camp. Moon waxed half full. Jon called leaders to final council beneath willow canopy. Plan simple. At dawn, Drogon would torch siege engines flanking southeast wall while archers on city ramparts launched fletched wildfire arrows provided from Harrenhal stocks. Unsullied and Manderly foot would charge breach created by free folk sappers who'd creep under palisade before light, planting barrels of Rosby's stolen lamp oil. Once confusion peaked, Davos would sail a punt upriver delivering Arya and a handful of silent sisters, free folk women adept at knife work, through the Watergate to open portcullis from inside. Goal was swift capitulation, minimal blood. That night Daenerys visited Drogon where he lay coiled on meadow rise beyond camp. She stroked his neck scales, whispering in Valyrian. He rumbled, amber eyes soft. When Jon approached, Dragon hissed amused warmth, steaming springtime grass. "He forgives you," she said, smiling. "Or he forgave you the day you stabbed me." Jon winced but accepted the reminder. "If I live 1,000 years, that night will burn bright." She touched his cheek, gentle. "Live 1 year at a time, then tomorrow, then the next sunrise." She leaned up, kissed him beneath stars. For heartbeat he felt weightless. Dawn rose blood orange. Mist clung to rushes. Tormund's free folk wormed under siege stakes dragging casks. The hush felt like the hush before snowfall. Above, Drogon's silhouette cut the lightning sky. When he banked, the entire encampment seemed to tilt. Sudden roar. Siege towers burst into flame from within, Arya's sabotage to spark panic. At the same instant, casks exploded along palisade, green fire spiraling skyward. Lannister ranks screamed, scattering as walls of emerald heat licked timber. Horns blared from Riverrun Keep. Drogon plunged through smoke, red flame washing a scorpion crew. Jon, atop borrowed bay, led unsullied wedge. Shields raised, spears lowered. They struck palisade where casks had shredded stakes to tinder.
Wildlingsfladdet brich, war Axes singing.
Manderly pikes followed, chanting sea dirges. Resistance surprisingly light, half the besiegers already fled into foggy fields. Those that remained saw dragon aloft and lost nerve. Within minutes, Unsullied seized Central Command tent. Ser Richard Rosby tried to rally but surrendered when Grey Worm's spear shattered his sword at parry. Meanwhile, inside Riverrun, Arya lifted a rusting portcullis with help from Watergate winch. Daenerys led company across drawbridge, embraced by Lord Edmure who wore patched breastplate and tear-streaked cheeks. "You brought spring," he murmured. Victory claimed before midday, with fewer than 20 wounded among Liberation Army. Jon accepted Rosby's sword, returning it blunt-side first as sign of clemency. Sellswords who laid down arms were offered provisions to march south or join rebuilding. Most chose marching with purses of copper Davos produced. None wished further part in war. Now one dragon and half-legend northern hero commanded Riverlands. Inside Riverrun's hall, council reconvened. Lord Edmure spoke of famine creeping along Red Fork, fields burned by foragers. Brothers from the Arbor reported Golden Company had turned east, rumored seeking passage across Blackwater Rush to reinforce a Dornish pretender claiming Martell blood. "The realm fractures," Edmure concluded. "Your dragon may heal or further break." Daenerys answered with plain vow. "I reserve dragonfire for tyrants, not farmers." She announced shipment of Manderly grain to feed Riverlands, escorted by unsullied detachments to deter bandits. She asked Edmure to gather lords at Riverrun in one moon's turn to discuss governance. He bowed agreement, humbled. That evening, small folk lined streets throwing petals as Unsullied marched torchlit. Children touched Grey Wolf emblazoned on Jon's surcoat with awe. For them, the man who defeated death itself was ghost-tale come flesh. Jon accepted praise uneasily, mindful of prophecy nightmares that kings burn brightly then fade. In private, he met with Sansa and Arya atop Riverrun's high tower. The wind here smelled of wet hay, not ice. Sansa gazed across twinkling villages. "I begin to understand," she said. "South may fear dragons, but they fear chaos more. We can be order." Jon swallowed. King's Landing remains wild. He told them of Golden Company and rumors of Cersei. Arya asked to scout capital's backstreets. A blade in the dark again. Sansa argued to send envoys first. Jon promised to weigh both counsel. Later, alone, he walked ramparts until he reached shadowy alcove above Godswood courtyard. There he found Bran seated, no wheelchair, no flesh. Instead, a swirl of ravens perched along parapet, eyes black but ringed faint emerald. Jon sensed his brother within them, You journey still, Bran's thought voice whispered, ruffling every quill at once. Balance teeters. Fire burns bright. Guard against its hunger. Jon placed palm on cold stone. We struck for mercy, Bran, not conquest. Mercy to one may be flame to another, Bran replied. A single raven fluttered to Jon's shoulder, tilting head. Remember the sapling. Roots nourish leaf, but leaf feeds root with sun. Power must return to soil eventually. Wind gusted. Ravens dispersed, leaving empty parapet. Jon stared after them, understanding partly. He resolved then to carry spear always, not as scepter but reminder of debt. Weeks passed in tireless reconstruction. Winter receded. Crocuses pierced thaw. Harvest fields blackened by camps were plowed anew by freed peasants carrying spades hammered from defunct scorpion parts. Gendry's forges rang day and night, churning axes, plowshares, hinges. Sam established a small scriptorium within Riverrun's library, copying salvageable tomes. Gilly taught village girls letters between feedings of infants now toddling. Tormund led free folk to help raise palisades along roads. Though he grumbled about fences, he relished ale and warm hearths offered by grateful farmers. Wildling Giant's child Lyra became local legend, lifting roof beams alone. Lady Willa organized riverboats to ferry stone from quarries. Her sailors joked they had swapped seas for muddy water, but smiles were genuine. Through it all, Daenerys and Drogon patrolled skies, visiting hamlets to drop bundles of seed and honey. At first villagers kneeled in terror. Soon children waved. She used flame to fell rotting trees obstructing irrigation channels, cautious never to scorch fields. In evenings she met with Jon at Godswood, planning councils, a joint Northern River charter, perhaps even an assembly where lords and small folk each send 3 delegates. A dream yet unvoiced. Word spread. Queen of Ashes no more but Queen of Seeds. The spear of wildfire forged steel had become symbol, heart flame, Sam named it. Bards spun song of the spear that slew the endless night. But shadows lengthened. Scouts reported Golden Company establishing stronghold at Blackwater Bay, reinforcing walls of King's Landing. Elephants indeed roamed fields south of the city. More alarming, smoke rising from Storm's End, possible siege by Dornish host. And still rumors persisted of Cersei's survival, hidden beneath Red Keep in labyrinths built by mad alchemists. Council at Moon's Turn convened. Riverlords, Northmen, Ironborn emissaries of Lady Asha, Tyrell cousins exiled by Lannisters, even shadow-clad envoy of faceless men from Bravos. No one quite knew his intent, but hospitality demanded seat nonetheless. Hall buzzed with suspicion and hope. Lord Edmure opened with petition for United Regency until realm stabilizes. Willa argued naval blockade of King's Landing to starve Sellswords. Arya suggested infiltration. Brienne urged parley first. Voices rose until Jon slammed Heartflame but against floor. Sparks leapt emerald. Silence fell. We will not trade one tyranny for another, he began. The dragon's fire ended the dead. It must not forge new chains. The realm shall choose its wardens freely. Queen Daenerys and I offer guardianship, not rule, until fair council can be elected. Gasps followed, yet Daenerys stood unflinching. I swore to break wheels, she said. I invite each of you to design what comes. A realm where lords answer to the people who till their fields. She raised voice so gallery heard. When King's Landing opens its gates, we will not sit old thrones. We will melt them, cast plows, and build seats where every voice holds weight. Not all found comfort in such vision. Lord Glover muttered darkly about peasants forgetting station. A Tyrell cousin sniffed at abolition of titles, but whispers coursed faster than dissent. Common folk dreaming of say in harvest levies, Sellswords hearing promise of paid lands after fight, even minor lords eyeing seats in new assembly rather than fealty to distant queen. Arya caught Jon's arm later in cloister. Bold words. Let's hope they bloom better than wildfire. He met her half-smile. They'll need gardeners. That's us. Preparations for march on King's Landing resumed with fresh urgency. River road columns formed. Unsullied spears, Manderly heavy infantry, knights of the trident clad in mismatched armor touched up by Gendry's hammer, and wildling skirmishers weaving among hedges. Overhead, ravens scouted routes, Bran's silent eyes mapping enemy entrenchments. Before departure, Jon visited Sapling in Godswood. Under Sam's care, it had grown to waist-high tree, trunk twisting with both weirwood white and ash green, leaves mottled crimson veins. He placed palm on bark. Flash of vision danced behind eyelids. Red keep collapsing under wave of cheering citizens. Drogon shedding final scale of ice memory. Bran walking a beach of black sand while wolves played with dragons' hatchlings. Hope, fragile yet luminous. Daenerys joined, touching his hand. "When the world ends," she whispered, "may it be because we built something greater, not because we broke what survived." He laced fingers with hers. "Let's start by opening those gates." Thus the army set south, Heartflame riding across saddle before Jon, glowing faintly in spring sunshine. On first hill crest he turned back. Riverrun's walls glistened, fields shimmering emerald. Smoke of chimneys rose unhurried. A small boy near gate waved pennant of wolf entwined with dragon. Jon lifted spear tip toward sky in salute, then spurred horse forward. Dawn stretched across riverlands, scattering last frost into glitter. Behind the marching host, sapling's leaves rustled in breeze, whispering through twin-hued canopy. A sound like pages turning, like history rewriting itself leaf by leaf. And somewhere ahead, King's Landing's massive gates waited, iron and hateful, to feel the knock of a spear forged from memory and flame, carried by a man reborn from death, guided by visions of a brother in bird's wings, and accompanied by a queen who had traded fire of destruction for fire that nurtured. The long night had broken, but another dawn demanded courage. With dragon overhead and river wind at their backs, they marched to meet it, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, refusing the rusted wheel of old history, forging instead a pathway of green and gold where spring might finally flower without fear. An orange hush lay over the camps strung along the tumblestone. Morning fires guttered, smearing faint ribbons of smoke through air that tasted of thaw and horse sweat. Jon Snow stood beside a picket line, tightening the final buckle on Ghost's new boiled leather barding. The dire wolf accepted the fuss with regal indifference, golden eyes drifting toward the first rays that struck Riverrun's ramparts behind them. Ahead, the river road wound between greening hedgerows, bright with dew diamonds that would soon turn to dust beneath 5,000 boots. The host woke slowly but efficiently. Manderly horns called roll from the eastern meadow, two long notes answered by the flat thrum of unsullied drums from the ferry yard. Wildling whistles, sharp and bird-like, echoed among hedges where scouts had slept in makeshift hammocks slung over irrigation ditches. Riverrun's portcullis rattled, lowering just high enough for a trickle of wagons laden with dried lentils, river trout packed in salt, and kegs of red ale to rumble out. Jon caught the earthy scent of fresh-turned loam drifting across a paddock where small folk already plowed under blackened siege camps. They waved little cloth swatches, wolf entwined with dragon, and he lifted a gloved hand in return. He felt the weight of their hope and wondered again whether he deserved it. Heartflame rested against his back in a tooled scabbard Gendry had cobbled from softened ox hide. Even sheathed, the spear seemed alive. A warm hum nestled between shoulder blades like a second pulse. He reminded himself that faith was heavier than any blade. Across the trampled field, Daenerys emerged from her pavilion. Silver hair freshly braided behind a circlet of sapling leaves Sam had woven at dawn. The greening boughs sat graceful above the line of her scar. Specks of red at their tips suggested new buds despite the chill. She strode with measured ease, ignoring the sling Sam continued to plead she wear, and vaulted onto her black stallion like a cell's word half her weight. Drogon's shadow swept past an instant later. He banked lazily over the muster, a predator at peace for the moment. The sun glanced crimson on his scales, no hint of the blue that once shackled him. Jon mounted and guided Ghost to Daenerys' side. She tilted a faint smile. "You slept. Enough to dream," he said, keeping his own smile small to hide lingering nerves. "In mine, Bran walked the ramparts of Winterfell, restored and bright with lanterns. A dream, but it felt less impossible than yesterday. She squeezed his forearm. Winterfell will stand again. Stone can be quarried, but heart's harder won. We'll see to both. Ghost stepped ahead, and she clicked her tongue to fall in alongside the direwolf. Jon let the moment linger before signaling the column. Drums began a low cadence. Manderly banners unfurled, sea green bearing the leaping mermaid. Unsullied shields lifted, imprint of the Valyrian worm bright after fresh paint. Wildlings carried no sigil but raw optimism. Tormund stalked at their fore, hair now tied with a scrap of Riverrun crimson. Knights of the Trident closed ranks, steel clinking with new fittings hammered by Gendry's tireless apprentices. Across each gorget, a slim braid of ash root had been riveted, a reminder that no helm, no rank, lay above the living's bond. The first pace forward sent a hush, but it was a hush of breath held in readiness rather than fear. Jon guided his mount to a low hillock as thousands filed past. He held Heartflame aloft, the spear's emerald veins catching morning light and scattering it across spear points, scaling across glaive edges and iron-banded shields. Murmurs broke. Heartflame, king in the north, mother of spring. He dipped the spear once, blessing the road, and joined the vanguard. They marched at the steady rhythm of shield percussion south of the Tumblestone for 3 days, skirting villages where small folk emerged shyly with baskets of onions and turnips to gift the host. Daenerys always accepted with bow or kiss to a child's brow, then left double the worth in coin or salt. Rumor of her generosity outpaced them. By dusk of the second day, footpaths lining the road bloomed with lanterns and garlands of early snowdrops. Scouts reported the Golden Company had fortified King's Landing's northern approaches, felling orchards to create killing fields and digging earthworks bristling with spears. Elephants, they confirmed, lumbered among tents just beyond the city's old stone lion gate. 14 beasts strapped with wicker howdahs and heavy scorpion mounts. At Storm's End, banners of a Dornish sun spear entwined with martel red fluttered, though the castle remained unbreached. Between, petty lords of Crackclaw Point feuded, some bending knee to the Golden Company, others withholding grain. The realm no longer resembled any single kingdom. It was a mosaic of grudges, with Jon and Daenerys' spear shoving each shard into new alignment. On the march's fourth night, they bivouacked near Acorn Hall, where Lady Smallwood welcomed them with honeyed oatcakes and barrels of pine mead. In her garden's orchard, under lanterns strung between budding apple limbs, Jon convened a fireside council. Daenerys, Arya, Sansa, Sam, Davos, Grey Worm, Willa, Tormund, Brienne, and the Braavosi envoy, known only as the Tall Man, who stood silent at the circumference. Maps spread over a milkwood table sticky with sap. Davos tapped one spot east of the Blackwater. Dick Crabb's ferry, unwatched, shallow draft, could slip an infiltrating party through fog 2 hours before dawn. 2 leagues upriver of the city. He eyed Arya. That's your door if stealth beats siege. Arya folded arms, expression half shadow. If we strike the throne, armies will lay down or tear themselves apart. A blade may spare thousands. Sansa frowned. Cersei may not even live. The Golden Company follow gold and myth. Slay her corpse and they still fight for coin. Daenerys traced finger along entrenchments north of the city. Siege by land invites starvation. Innocents pay first. I won't starve them. Drogon can break the elephant lines, but each gout of fire terrifies the streets. She looked at Jon. Sometimes fear must be tasted to pass. Jon considered Sam's earlier research, Tales of Aegon's Conquest, Field of Fire. Let's send envoys first, he decided. Show them the spear. Demonstrate we hold winter's doom at bay. Offer surrender terms. Lay down arms, join council, face no retribution. He half smiled. If they scoff, Arya stalks before dawn. The tall man stepped forward at last, voice soft, accent rippling like dusk tide. Braavos remembers debts. Should Golden Company reject peace, the Iron Bank will withdraw loans long owed. Their loyalties bend with wind. We change the wind, the swords will follow. He opened palm to reveal ledger slip bearing crimson seal. None doubted its weight. Plan shaped itself around carrot and quiet blade rather than dragonfire. Grey Worm would lead Unsullied to entrench along King's Road south of the Honeywine crossroads, cutting reinforcement lines without engaging civilians. Manderley ships would blockade the gullet, but allow grain ships flagged with green leaf sigil to pass. Food purchased in Riverrun's markets and offered free to the city once gates opened. This dual vision, steel at throat, bread at palm, would test hearts behind the walls. Even so, war seldom bows to plans. Rain delayed departure 2 more days. Roads became sucking mires. Elephants, scouts said, were paraded along ramparts each dusk, trumpeting to rattle nerves. Wildling outriders captured a pair of Golden Company stragglers who claimed Cersei indeed lived. Hidden in the red keeps lowest crypts, half mad, muttering names of dead children. Rumor or bait? Jon weighed possibilities. Arya simply polished Catspaw's blade and said one mad queen bled as any other. The night before they broke camp, Jon walked the orchard alone, drizzle pattering apple buds. Ghost padded behind, occasionally snapping at startled rabbits too slow to hide. Lanterns long extinguished, only heart flames' faint hum guided him. At the stone well where he'd met with ravens earlier, he found Bran, or what remained, waiting again, this time in a single rook perched upon mossy bucket rim. The game continues, Bran's thought sang. Thrones melt, but crowns of greed are forged anew. Beware those who claim peace yet stir embers. Jon leaned against well lip. You speak of someone? The rook cocked head. The tall man sees ledgers, not lives. His quill may bleed more than sword. And in the crypt city, wildfire seeds sleep restless. Jon's stomach tightened. He knew the caches still laced beneath King's Landing, leftovers of Aerys' final madness. You warn I must strike quickly? You must strike true. Fire that frees also devours. Wind gust rustled orchard leaves. Jon blinked. Rook lifted abruptly, wings beating night. Ghost growled low, watching it vanish north into dark. They set out with dawn again. Hills flattened into reed marsh smelling of salt and river mud. Skies cleared. Crisp blue reflected on shallow pools where waders stalked. The host split by design. Unsullied and Knights took the more direct King's Road to stage a day's ride from the capital. The main column with food wagons lingered west along Rose Road, giving the appearance of mere relief convoy. Drogon ranged high overhead, seldom swooping low. That evening tents rose within sight of rolling orchards of the Crownlands. Fires, strictly contained, glimmered like fallen constellations. Jon shared last planning words with Daenerys. Envoys ride at moonrise, he said, smothering map corner with calloused thumb. If they refuse, we proceed at second crow. She nodded, but her eyes sought horizon where towers of King's Landing loomed faintly, torch halos flickering above walls. If they raise scorpions the moment you approach, Davos sails the ferry under truce flag, he answered. If bolts fly, it proves their intent. He touched her wrist gently. Keep Drogon back until signal. He produced cloth scrap dipped in lichen fire, would burn bright green even in fog. She tucked it into belt. Tonight Sam would remain with sapling and food wagons. Sansa would oversee quartermasters. Tormund would scout coastal cliffs with wildlings. Arya had already vanished beneath twilight. Jon felt the weight of each trust. Moon rose full and yellow, smeared by gauzy cloud. Davos steered small skiff upriver, lantern swinging at prow. Jon seated stern behind heartflame shrouded in canvas. 2 Manderley oarsmen pulled steady. Mist clung to water. From reeds, frogs croaked oblivious of history afloat. As they neared the city's inner quay, lanterns lined parapet and the heavy slab of the gate portcullis glowed with braziers. Trumpets barked, shadows massed. A herald shouted, voice cracking, "Identify or be sunk." Davos listed titles in calm drawl, ending with, bringing terms of peace from Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen and Lord Jon Snow of Winterfell. Silence answered save lap of water. After long minute, chains rattled. Small draw gate creaked and a wine-plump knight in matte mail peered down. flanked by sellswords in mismatched gear. He commanded they moor at a floating barge. Jon hefted Heartflame, canvas still wrapped, and stepped onto platform. Inside gate, tunnel torches hissed against damp. They were disarmed save spear. Jon refused, stating it was symbol not weapon, and eventually guard captain, one Sir Talbot Strickland, relented. They marched uphill through narrow lane redolent of lees and sourdough. Peasant faces peeked from shutter cracks. Many were gaunt, eyes dull. Yet, unlike tales of starvation, they did not appear skeletal. Manderley grain ships had slipped blockade daily under Greenleaf flag. Good. They reached the Red Keep's gatehouse, once pristine, now battered where new Scorpion turrets had been fused into battlements. Elephant stink mingled with forge smoke. They guided Jon into throne room's antechamber. Davos politely held outside. Grand doors yawned and the throne room's chandeliers sputtered uneven light. The iron throne still loomed at dais, barbed silhouette. But upon it sat no queen, only a gilded helm shaped like a manticore, resting upon severed block of cedar. Men in gold breastplates arrayed steps, crossbows half-cocked. A tall, hawk-faced man in white silk, Captain General Miles, toyed by Jon's guess, stood middle of hall. Beside him lounged a woman in green velvet whose hair, once golden, had thinned to dull straw. Her eyes flicked erratically. Her smile was too wide. Cersei Lannister rose slower than memory suggested. Shackles of delicate bronze bound her wrists, though loosely. "So Winter's bastard arrives," she crooned, voice raw as grave dust. "Come to finish what Snow began?" Strickland signaled archers lower crossbows, but tension hummed. Jon stepped forward, unwrapping spear. Green veins glowed faintly. "I bring terms. End bloodshed. Let the city choose its council. Grain awaits your gates. Stand down and live." Cersei laughed, a jagged bark. Toyne raised palm. Her laughter modulated but did not cease. Jon's gaze locked on Toyne. "Golden Company stands for coin," Jon said. "This hall offers none. But Riverlands will pay debt to no sellsword who slaughters small folk." Toyne's eyes flickered. "Contracts bind, but broken crowns bleed." He gestured to west balcony where, through open shutters, Drogon's silhouette cruised under moon. Dragons worth more alive than dead. Perhaps partnership. Jon exhaled slow. Partnership was offered. Peace profits more. Cersei hissed. "Peace for traitors? Burn them." She lunged but Toyne restrained her. She bit his gloved hand. The captain did not flinch but nodded at nearest alchemist in sooty robes who held stopper jar, wildfire glimmer. Alarm pounded Jon's chest. Bran's warning. At that instant shadow detached from column behind throne. Arya, face painted half ash, half blood. Catspaw pressed to Cersei's throat before anyone breathed. Toyne's guards reacted, but too slow. If they loosed, Queen's jugular would open. Hall froze. Jon's voice rang calm. "Enough!" He lifted Heartflame. Spear flared bright, bathing stones in green that dwarfed wildfire's shimmer. Night's terror ended by this flame. Stand with life or crumble with dead dreams. Toyne's chin lifted. Silence stretched. Finally he snapped orders. Crossbows lowered. Cersei trembled, fury morphing to fragile terror as Arya shifted blade away. Wildfire jar clinked against floor. Monk kneeling, offering it. Toyne removed manticore helm from throne, cast it down clanging. Contracts fulfilled. Company stands down. He turned to Cersei. "Queen without kingdom, you are under protective custody until tribunal." Her scream pierced hall, wordless, keening. Outside, bells that once told doom began to peal uncertainly, then louder. Jon hurried to balcony. City vista unfolded. Tens of thousands thronging squares, torches raised. Grey Worm's columns had ringed northern gate. Manderley ships glided up Blackwater bearing grain. And overhead Drogon banked, roaring, a promise of fire withheld, ready only if bloodlust rose. Arya joined Jon, flicking Cersei's blood. Small cut when Queen fought, from dagger. "Was easier than I expected," she muttered. almost disappoints. She winked, vanished into corridor to secure passages. Jon stepped into throne room center. Toyne awaited verdict. Jon spoke. As of this hour, warfare ends. Lay down arms. Receive bread and amnesty. Join council toward new realm. Cheers erupted from some. Others gawped. He did not care, words were seeds. Guards escorted Cersei away, still muttering prophecies of vengeance. Jon rapped Heartflame again and beckoned Davos inside. The old knight's eyes gleamed with disbelief. You broke a siege with a speech, lad. Speech and a sister's steel. Jon found Arya's smirk in shadows and lifted brow. She shrugged. You wanted tidy. I gave them option. Days blurred. More surrender banners rose than resistance. The first grain wagons entered Flea Bottom before dusk of second day. Children scrambled for crusts. No scorpions loosed bolts at Dragon Silhouette. Daenerys landed Drogon upon Aegon's high hill but kept his fire sheathed. She spoke to small folk gathered in Red Keep courtyard, promising stable markets, fair wages to mend walls, abolition of forced conscription. Rumor spread of Queen who forgave even those who once cheered her madness. Truth complicated, but people cling to hope. A provisional council formed inside sunlit small hall. Daenerys, Jon, Sansa representing North, Edmure for Riverlands, Willa for Reach and North Sea, Toyne for Sellswords, Asha Greyjoy sailed upriver to demand maritime freedoms, and Sam's learned voice. Brienne oversaw city watch, recruiting both former Lannister guards and common folk. Grey Worm trained a peacekeeping cadre nicknamed the Dawn Shields. Wilder glimpses of dawn indeed, yet tasks mountainous. Wildfire caches located by alchemists still loyal to Crown. Heartflame's glow guided unsullied sappers to each, neutralizing them with careful sand and river mud. Grain stores tallied. Plague threats mitigated with quick disposal of rotted siege carcasses. Manderley Navy ferried Tyrell cousins south to rebuild fields burned by elephants retreating. Tormund led free folk into forests outside Rose Road, felling diseased oaks for rebuild timbers, leaving healthy groves standing. His rough lessons in stewardship amused local farmers, but land heals. Spring festival set for first moon after snow to mark new calendar. On evening prior, Jon visited Forge Yard where Gendry hammered last rivet into massive cauldron repurposed from scorpion frame. Flames warmed stone. Sparks floated like fireflies. Nearby, workers melted remnants of iron throne. Barbs and swords hissed sliding into crucible. Gendry wiped brow. Feels wrong, burning history. Jon clasped shoulder. History not in iron, but stories we keep. They watched molten steel glow. Molten stream later cast into plows, stanchions for orphan bridges, and the keystone for a new council amphitheater in the Dragon Pit ruins. When smiths poured final ladle, Jon imagined ghost of Balerion exhaling, satisfied. Festival dawn came bright and sweet. Procession wound up hill of Rainies. Children bearing baskets of crocus petals. Pipers from Bravos playing tune-blending free cities with stark drum. Sailors whipping pennants of every house now allied. Sapling, now tall as a man, was carried atop wagon draped with silks. Its leaves brushed faces of crowd. Each who touched felt warmth. At Dragon Pit amphitheater built from repurposed thrown iron, benches arranged in circle. Delegates of houses high and low seated shoulder to shoulder. Sam opened proceedings reading a charter. Great assembly of realms, each region sending equal voices. Laws passed by weighted vote of nobles and freeholders. Murmurs mixed but rose to cheers. Daenerys spoke next, voice steady though scar-tugged when she gestured. She renounced hereditary rule, claiming title steward of the realm until assemblies elect steward every 10 years. She named Jon Snow Guardian of the North and the Wall, protector of old magic. Jon accepted, but added he would hold only until realm found someone wiser. Last came Bran, his ravens descending onto sapling, merging to silhouette that formed boy's figure of leaves and shadow before solidifying flesh. Gasps rippled. Bran smiled faint. Stories knit this world, he said. This assembly writes next page. He tapped root with staff. Saplings spread gentle fragrance like rain on earth. Guard this tree, as it guards memory. Crowd bowed. Festival became night of dance lit by floating lanterns across Blackwater. Drogon wheeled overhead, releasing shower of harmless sparks. Daenerys had fed him crushed fire gem dust from Valyrian relics. Sparks drifted blue-green, winking out before touching roofs. Music layered. Wildling drums, Dornish lutes, Reach harps. Jon found Arya on parapet overlooking city, cloak snapping. She sipped plum wine, grimacing. "Sweet," she complained, though she drank again. He leaned beside her. "What horizon calls you now?" he asked. "West. If the world round, I'll sail until I see the sunset rise." She nudged his shoulder. "Keep them honest, Wolf King. If counsel turns rotten, send Raven. I'll come back with knife." He smiled. "I'll keep seat warm." Tormund's laugh boomed from courtyard where he danced with Lady Willa. Brienne sparred children with wooden swords. Grey Worm watched, amused at their ferocity. Sansa negotiated trade tariffs with Braavosi bankers. Gold for grain fed into new treasury for orphan houses. Above all, Heartflame rested against throneless dais. Its glow mingled with lanterns. Jon Regard. Ed Spear, thinking of nights on wall, of Ygritte's laugh, of Battle of Bastards, of Winterfell hearth and Sam's first arrival. He realized story's burden. To carry flame forward but never let it blind. He walked into crowd, feeling weight lighten. Daenerys met him beneath sapling canopy, petals drifting about. She laced fingers through his. "Ready? For what? To dance." She tugged him toward circle where commoners and lords stomped steps taught by Dornish travelers. Jon had 2 left feet under best day, but her smile coaxed strides steadied by memory of snowfields. They danced until dawn bled pastel copper above dragon pit spires. As sunlight gilded sapling leaves, each flickered gold at rims, promise of summer. Bells that once told surrender now rang to greet a morn where no king nor queen held chains. Only people with bruised hearts learning to breathe unafraid. Years later, bards would debate when the age of broken night truly ended. Some would cite Heartflame's strike at Harrenhal, others Daenerys's bread wagons, others still the melting of the Iron Throne. Jon would claim it was this moment. First sunrise where laughter rose higher than fear, nourishing green leaves that cracked stone's remembrance of war. And far in north, Winterfell's walls slowly rose anew, each block etched with runes of spring, each timber bearing leaf brand. The ghosts there, soothed by memory and fire, rested at last. Ghost barked at sky where Drogon banked in flush of dawn, wings painting arcs of freedom. Jon lifted his gaze, feeling that wild wind on face, a new future would never again be shaped by cold death alone, but by living hearts willing to wield fire gently and let roots grow deep. A briny wind drifts through the Dragon Pit amphitheater in the gray hush before dawn. Lanterns gutter in their iron cages, scattering flecks of gold across the half-finished marble tiers where yesterday thousands feasted. Now only a small figure lingers among the scaffolds. Bran Stark, limbs wrapped in gray doeskin, palms pressed to the new sapling's roots. Ravens coil above him like living smoke, beating black wings into the rose-tinged sky. Their croaks weave with the wind, half prayer, half farewell. South of the hill, Jon Snow wakes to the slap of canvas and a whiff of cool seaweed. His tent is still, save for the low snore of Tormund sprawled on a pallet nearby, an empty wineskin for a pillow. Ghost lies before the entrance flap, ears twitching at every muffled footstep. Dawn will break within an hour. Soon horns will sound, rousing the host for the march to Storm's End. Jon eases from his blanket and pads barefoot to the water barrel, splashing his face. From somewhere in the camp, a sailor begins tuning a lute. Soft notes quiver in hush like bird calls. A peaceful moment, rare as dragon glass in peacetime. He dresses quickly. Quilted gambeson, wolf-stamped leather jerkin, riding trousers stained by dust of Riverland's roads. He buckles the dagger Robb once gifted him, then lifts Heartflame from the spear rack, feels its quiet living hum. Gendry's new scabbard straps across his back with smooth familiarity. When he emerges, Ghost rises too, stretching, tail sweeping dew. Together they stride past dim cookfires and murmuring guards until the sea comes into view, the black water glittering under paling stars, Manderley cogs bobbing at anchor. In half-washed dawn, the capital looks almost beautiful. Red roofs washed soft pink, towers crowned with clouds the color of peaches. The river mouth is busy even this early. Grain barges gliding inland, their hulls painted green leaf. No scorpions atop the walls now, only cranes hoisting stone blocks for the broken parapet. He crosses the courtyard of the ruined September of Baylor, now cleared of rubble to create a market for traders. Hawkers unload baskets of river trout and spring radishes, giving half their stock free to orphans still stirring from canvas shelters along the nave. John pauses beside a stone pillar etched with new runes, a snow-crowned direwolf intertwined with a dragon's talon. A baker sets a warm roll in his hand unasked. John thanks her quietly. She smiles shyly, cheeks smudged with flour, and watches him walk on. Atop Aegon's high hill, Daenerys steps from her pavilion just as the first sun gleam crowns the horizon. She wears simple black riding leathers, her silver-gold hair knotted in a single braid threaded with living sapling leaves. The shoulder wound has knit to a pale seam, though Sam says the scar may forever ache in cold. She greets John with a nod that speaks of many shared dawns. No need for words. Drogon reclines behind her like a living citadel, eyes slitted, smoke curling lazily from nostrils. When John scratches the dragon's jaw hinge, Drogon's pupils dilate in remembered affection. Daenerys' smile reaches her eyes. She slips a hand into John's and together they survey the waking city. Their city, for now, until the people choose otherwise. Grey Worm strides up steps in full polished breastplate, cloak clasped with dawn shield brooch. Columns ready, my queen, my lord. His voice is quiet but carries. Storm's End beacon burned again last night. Dornish banners still at Tide Gate, but castle yet holds. Any reply to our raven? John asks, though he expects none. Grey Worm confirms silence. The garrison of Storm's End has refused every overture. Too proud or too fearful to trust dragon and wolf. Daenerys inhales sea air. Then we ride. We relieve the siege and leave them choice. Open gates to grain, or remain hungry behind stone. She gestures to the citadel below. When council meets in 3 days, I want every border quiet. John knows the deeper reason. Daenerys needs to keep moving, to turn outward, lest the memory of blue-eyed Drogon return in midnight dreams. Action salves torment. He squeezes her fingers before drawing away. I'll take the vanguard with Tormund and Willa's outriders. You and Drogon remain reserve. We're meant to show peace first. She arches a brow. Still afraid I'll burn another city? Afraid the city will burn itself, if it believes you come to conquer. His smile is rueful. Let bread always walk ahead of fire. She relents, though mischief sparks. Very well, King Snow, guardian of crumb and crust. But if those Sel's words dare harm a single Stormlander child, I will feed their scorpions to Drogon. She presses a hard kiss to his cheek, tasting salt. Now go. The march moves south along the Rose Road, banners snapping in fresh coastal breeze. Unsullied shields gleam mirror-bright. Knights of the Trident sing an off-key song about a woman of Maidenpool who rears dragons in her pigsty. Wildlings jog in loose packs, axes bouncing. Ghost Lopez ahead, startling pheasants into flight. 2 hours past midday, the host halts near ruined hamlet where orchards bloom violet with plum blossoms. There they meet Lord Gendry Baratheon, he and 20 Stormlander levies having ridden through night to reach them. Gendry swings from saddle, hair matted with sweat. Siege started last moon, he pants. Dornish Prince Quentyn Martell's bastard grandson, calls himself Reynald Sand. Demanded Storm's End in Dorne's name. Claims Sharera Seastar's line still owns Baratheon blood. He's got 3 ships, 4 elephants, and 1,000 Sellswords from Volantis. They dug trenches around the castle but can't breach walls. We've skirmished on coast, bought time for harvest, but... He spreads calloused hands. We lack numbers. John clasps his arm. Numbers you have now. He notes Gendry's drawn features. You've not slept. Sleep when castle safe. Gendry wipes face, swallowing exhaustion. Enough talk. They've set catapult on Old Wind Ridge, Lob Rocks day and night. We cut it first. Grey Worm opens map across stump. Plan forms quick. Manderley Horse cross Apple Uplands, flank Rocklobber. Wildlings scale ridge from seaside, sabotage supply cart. Unsullied March Center, shields roofed against quarrels. Drogon remains hidden behind hill until horns call. Jon rides point with Gendry, Tormund, Lady Willa. They crest a low rise at dusk. Storm's End stands mighty on promontory, walls washed honey by setting sun. Encircling trenches spider across dunes. Within, Reynold's tents glow saffron. Elephants graze near siege towers decked in striped cloth. Jon counts watchers pacing palisade, crossbows slack, confidence born of no serious threat. The apple orchard hushes around him, lilacs drifting like snow. He raises hand. Manderley archers release flaming arrows onto catapult. Tarp covering pitch barrels ignites in spectacular bloom, showering sparks down slope. At signal Tormund leads 50 free folk bursting from scrub, howling. They overrun supply caravan, smashing wheels, scattering sellswords too drunk to stand. Elephant trumpets in alarm. Siege camp erupts confusion. Unsullied emerge beneath triangular shields, silent tide. Jon and Gendry gallop along outer trench carving path. Reynold Sand rides forward on piebald charger, crimson spattered mantling. He swings curved sword atop trench berm, voice piping high. By the blood of Nymeria, stand your ground. One of his own sells words, seeing dragon silhouette blot moon, drops pike and flees. Others follow. Reynold curses, spurring horse to rally, but Gendry intercepts with hammer that smashes shield to splinters. Steel shrieks. Reynold tumbles, winded. Jon dismounts, pulls helmet free. Reynold glares up, Sand stuck to tears. I fight for justice, he wheezes. Storm's End stolen by bastards. Jon extends hand. Storm's End belongs to its people. Justice is bread, not siege. He hauls Reynold upright, binds wrists with leather thong. Within our camp surrendered. Elephants, docile once Mahouts disarmed, are led to River Meadow, to later haul stone for harbor repair. Dornish sells words, promise safe passage home, load boats with leftover rations. Wildlings cheer, draping stolen tents as cloaks. Grey Worm orders trenches filled to prevent flooding. At dawn, Storm's End's great gate groans outward. Castellan Sere Jane Penrose rides forth on aged destrier, banners drooping in calm sea air. She squints at the host arrayed peacefully. When Jon presents terms, grain stores, wood shipments, representation in Realm Council, Penrose's weathered face softens. We guarded these walls 10 generations, she rasps. Never thought host with dragon would speak of votes. She signals and portcullis rises fully. Inside courtyard children chase each other among winter cabbages sprouting in barrel gardens. Dogs bark happily at ghosts' approach. Jon presents Gendry, newly forged lord recognized by council. Some gawp at the thought a blacksmith's son may sit same dais as Tarly or Royce. Penrose merely nods at hammer slung across his back. Baratheon chief weapon was hammer, she muses. Iron finds home in any hand. Council banners soon hang from ramparts. Wolf, dragon, hammerstag bound by sea green ribbon. Daenerys arrives at midday, flying low over waves to avoid friction gusts. Stormlanders gather in Bailey, expecting scorching display, but Drogon lands lightly, folding wings. He puffs small smoke rings at giggling children. Daenerys dismounts, discards riding gloves, kneels to accept oat loaf from baker's daughter missing front teeth. Laughter breaks tension. Castle smiles. After feast of stewed crab and onion, Jon and Daenerys walk seawall. Clouds scarf horizon. Gulls wheel. Jon feels the pull of north again. Winterfell's reconstruction nearing foundation stage. Glover letters speak of new granary raising. But he also feels roots sprouting here. Saplings seeds ironically. It dropped 4 pods en route. Sam planted one near Rose Road crossing. He wonders whether he is destined to roam realm planting trees instead of wielding spear. Daenerys senses his distance. You dream of snow. I dream of home. Yet every hill becomes home when we leave seeds. She brushes hair from her eyes. Then walk with me. Plant them all. They share quiet. An abrupt horn blast from Lookout pierces moment. Grey worm rushes. Longship sails, iron-born colors. Far out on frothy sea, black sails trimmed gold cut toward coast. Asha Greyjoy's raven said she'd secure Iron Isles. Could be her, but sails bear kraken clutching lion's skull, Euron's sign. Jon curses softly. We killed death itself. Still world coins monsters. Horn blows thrice. Wildling scouts rushing. Ships appear beyond first. 5, 8, then another line shimmering. Euron's Reaver fleet may be seeking rich plunder now realm disarmed. Daenerys sighs. Dragon or diplomacy? We've tried bread, Jon mutters. Perhaps show them oven. She smirks, mounts Drogon. Jon descends to courtyard, orders archers to battlements but holds release. Drogon takes sky, wings tearing cloud. Reaver ship figurehead glints demon grin. Asha Greyjoy stands at prow of lead ship, hand raised. She storms across deck, signaling friend, not foe. Euron's banners are trophies, seized after battle at Pike. She brings fleet to join council. Word reached Islands of New Order, and thralls mutinied against Euron's priests. Relief, but adrenaline lingers. Jon meets Asha in surf spray. She slaps his shoulder. Thought I'd surprise you, Wolf. Almost roasted my masts. He exhales. Your sense of humor sharper than my heart. Her grin crooked. Come, show me this tree council. I've gifts, salt fish, timber, and 3 maester apprentices who mutinied with me. One claims to heal scurvy with pickled lemon. Council reconvenes in Storm's End Great Hall. New faces. Asha representing Iron Isles, Lord Rowan for Stormlands, nominated by local barons after Lord Gendry declines governance to remain Smith Lord. Dornish emissaries seeking peace after Reynald's folly. Sam presents charter revisions. Each region may choose steward every 5 years. Steward seats rotated. Council to elect High Marshal only in times of existential threat. Heartflame to remain in neutral hall. Dragon Pit Amphitheater. Accessible for ceremonies but not as weapon. Debate ensues. Dornish envoy demands reparations for Reynald's capture. Willa counters with ledger of shipping tariffs owed by Sunspear. Sam diffuses with compromise. Dornish caravans exempt from toll for 3 seasons if they supply saffron and citrus to famine-stricken crownlands. Council votes aye. Applause brittle but genuine. Night falls. Daenerys visits cellars where Cersei kept, under guard by dawn shields. The former queen sits in narrow cot, hair shorn shorter than squires, muttering list of names. Myrcella, Tommen, Joffrey, Mountain, Septa Unella. She barely notices Daenerys' entrance until candles illuminate scar on Dany's shoulder. Then her gaze sharpens, hatred tempered by something like envy. So you got your throne after all, she rasps.
No throne, Daenerys answers.
Only soil and stone. She places loaf of bread and cup of river water on stool. Eat, you'll stand trial soon, fair one. Not the sort you gifted your enemies. Cersei laughs softly. Trial by fire, perhaps? I remember wildfire kisses. Daenerys' eyes harden. Fire obeys me now, and it will not dance for you. She turns to leave. Cersei calls. When they tire of your mercy, they'll beg you for flame again. Her smile curdles. And you will give it because it's easier than laws. Daenerys pauses. Perhaps, but I will weep for it first. She exits, sealing door. Weeks turn to months. Spring unfurls fully. Lavender along Blackwater, wheat shoots across reach. Council shuttles between Dragon Pit Amphitheater, Winterfell Stone Yards, and Riverrun plowshares. Jon rides often, spear across back, planting seeds of peace by presence alone. Daenerys tours farmlands on Dragon, breathing gentle heat to thaw flooded fields. Small triumphs accumulate. Alchemists convert wildfire stock into sealed lamps that burn bright for night fishermen. Baelish estate reclaimed, wealth used for orphanages. Free cities envoys sign grain and spice treaties. Citadel votes to allow women into novice ranks. Gilly among first. Yet not all smooth. An assassin strikes at Willa during harbor review. Arrow tipped with basilisk venom. Brienne intercepts. Shield shattered. Forearm lacerated. Sam's quick poultice saves her. Investigation traces poison to disgruntled Tyrell cousin opposed to new order. Council orders fair trial. Convict exiles rather than executes, setting precedent of mercy. Wildling border raid occurs near Eastwatch. Free folk splinter group refuses southern laws, steals sheep. Jon rides north, meets them before they cross Frostfangs. He sits at fire with Chieftain Hagra, reminds of Night King's defeat ode to unity. Hot ale and tales of giants lost defuse standoff. Free folk agree to seasonal grazing rights in exchange for arrow fletchings. In coastal hamlet, Sam and Gendry unveil first school where both noble and low-born children learn runes, maths, Valyrian phrases. Sansa sponsors seamstresses there, fabrics dyed with bluebells. Trade rivals Bravo's silks. During harvest feast at Dragon Pit, Bran appears again, now in full flesh, though eyes still hold raven shadow. He declares memory stable. Sapling's roots anchor his warg spirit, allowing body to return. Council votes Bran keeper of lore, custodian of arcane secrets restricted from everyday rule but available for crises. Winterfell reconstruction culminates. Huge weirwood ash hybrid transplanted from Dragon Pit sapling's eldest cutting to Godswood, transported by barge and giant child Lyra's aid. Jon returns to witness planting. He kneels, feeling bark under palm, hearing quiet pulse of both old gods and new spring. Night before leaving north again, Jon stands on rampart with Daenerys. Cold wind carries scent of pine and wood smoke. This place now beats, he tells her. She wraps cloak around them. Ours does too. Hands rest over her midriff. A subtle sign that quickened his heart months earlier now quickens again. When snow melts for good, we'll build cradle near hearth. He breathes warmth into her hair. Child of fire and frost. Ghost howls beneath rising moon, welcoming prophecy to sky. Back south, King's Landing slowly sheds scars. Rye and barley imported fill granaries. Orphans now run bakery within former throne room. Ovens built from melted throne's bricks. They call bread crowns. Round loaves with dragon wing slashes top. Tourists from Pentos and Norvos come to taste. Tourney of Peace hosted at Duskendale pits sells word archers against free folk spear throw. Winner receives apple blossom wreath instead of purse sign of times. Cersei's trial comes at autumn equinox. Council hall brims. She stands gaunt but clear-eyed, hair regrown short curls. Accusations recited. Wildfire massacre, murder of Septa, ordering death of Robert's bastards, alliance with dead. Witnesses speak. Sandor Clegane recounts flight from King's Landing. Archmaester testifies to wildfire cash count. Cersei offers little defense. Only states history will judge real traitors. Verdict. Exile to Silent Sisters Island of Deadstones, with vow of silence. She laughs ironically, then falls quiet, perhaps first act of acceptance. She boards black-sailed small ship guarded by 4 dawn shields and disappears into mists of Blackwater. Some say she smiled seeing sunrise on water. Years slide onward. Council expands seats to Free City's ambassadors. Dragon Pit becomes Congress floor. Debates echo under once-destroyed dome. Heartflame stands at chamber center. Never used but always glowing. A reminder. Daenerys chairs sessions until her belly large. Then Sansa takes gavel, surprising all with sharp wit and gentle firmness. Arya sails west aboard longship, Blind Cat, leaving note. I'll send maps. Her departure stirs mixture of grief and pride. Storm's End hosts first festival of D. On the anniversary of Night King's fall. Giant's child Lyra lights great bonfire near cliffs. Drogon circles overhead dropping halos of sparks. Gendry forges commemorative coins bearing twin trees, one white, one green. He stamps date, year 5 ABN, after broken night. Currency spreads quickly. Sam travels Citadel giving lectures on unity of magics. He shows Heartflame forging scroll, chronicles. Maesters scoff at wild notions of living metal but cannot ignore Blade's pulse. Bran visits Essos via ravens, guiding shipping lanes away from storms. He foils slaver plots, his ravens leading galleys to catch. Braavos thanks Realm with lone forgiveness. Tormund returns north, marries fisherwoman of Skagos after colorful courtship. Their union symbol of bridging wild and south. In 10th year ABN, Council votes to retire Daenerys and Jon from stewardship, gifting them titles Shepherds of Dawn. They accept, handing gavel to elected steward Lady Willa, surprising many. Daenerys retires to Dragonstone, raising 2 children. Rhaena, fierce like Arya, and Brandon, quiet like Bran. Jon splits seasons between Winterfell and Dragonstone. Roams land on Ghost's descendants teaching smiths and farmers to harness gentle dragon heat via Drogon's breath vents. One crisp evening on Dragonstone's western bluff, Rhaena, age 8, touches Drogon's talon. The beast lowers head, eyes gentle. Jon watches, recalling first ride on Regal. He senses history turning again, but now in sunlight, not shadow. He feels leafroot connection humming across kingdoms. Weirwood ash hybrids planted at every major holdfast. Letters delivered via sapling network. Raven posts rarely needed. He and Daenerys walk cliff hand in hand. Waves crash far below. She muses that world still fragile. He agrees. But they built scaffolds more resilient than iron. Web of trust, bread, stories. Dusk settles. Torchflies flicker over tide pools. Far off, he imagines Arya charting unbroken sunset sea. Sansa drafting education statutes. Gendry designing aqueduct. Sam lecturing. Bran dreaming, guiding green webs. Brienne teaching sword forms to fisher girls. Grey Worm training dawn shields. Not a perfect world, Jon murmurs. Not yet, Daenerys replies. But ours to tend. She kisses him beneath blossoming white-green stars. Sapling pollen drifting high on warm updraft from Drogon's exhale. As night wraps Dragonstone, Heartflame, now mounted in lighthouse brazier, casts steady jade beam across bay. Sailors navigating know its promise. Follow green light, find safe harbor. And across lands once drowned in death's blue, hearths burn warm while wolves howl not in warning but in song. Greeting cycle of seasons unbroken. In small cottage at Winterfell's edge, old shepherd warms hands by fire, tells grandchild of long night ended. Child asks if monsters return. Shepherd smiles, points to sky where faint aurora still dances. Harmless now, beautiful. Monsters come, he says. Whenever people forget stories, he taps heart. Keep stories, keep fire. Monsters flee. Beyond starlit wall, sapling groves rustle gentle applause, leaves murmuring memory. Of a girl leaping at death, failing yet rising. Of a spear forged of memory and flame. Of bread offered before fire. Of will smashed and roots planted. Memory woven into living wood. Guarding dawn. Time flows on, but every spring, under first green bud, children gather at each sapling to hear story of Heartflame. They listen rapt, faces bright, and when teller finishes, they run laughing through fields, not fearing shadows but chasing them, for they know every shade can be lit by courage, every winter broken by hands that plant and tend instead of burn. Thus the realm lives, not perfect, but blooming, bound by song of leaf and ember, and in quiet chambers of Castle Black, now archive for old oaths, an ancient horn rests upon pedestal. Dust coats its rim, spiders weave between carvings. It waits for winter's future, but those winters will find a world ready, with dragons who breathe warmth, wolves who guard nights, and people who remember that green flame once pierced the cold and grew back into trees. Storm clouds gathered over the sunset sea, bruised and purple, but the deck of the blind cat rolled beneath a high, laughing moon. Salt sprayed across the bow where Arya Stark leaned, hair whipped silver-black in the lantern light. Her fingers traced Catspaw's worn pommel as if it were a whetstone for memory. A dozen paces aft, Captain Jalabar Ho cursed softly in summer tongue while his first mate reefed sail. The wind had turned sudden and strange, warm at the belly yet sharp along its teeth. Arya felt it too. It tasted not of storms alone, but of thresholds. By midnight the gale settled. The blind cat slid into a glassy calm so perfect that masts and rigging hung reflected in every direction, as if the ship floated between two oceans. Crewmen muttered, crossing fingers against water spirits. Arya studied the horizon. No stars ahead, only a velvet void that swallowed the world. Her heartbeat quickened. "Ready the longboat," she told Jalabar, who balked until she fixed him with a look colder than northern ice. She had paid well, promised richer spoils if he delivered her to the world's edge. The contract said nothing of how far she would row beyond. 2 hours later the longboat drifted from tether, lantern curtained to preserve dark sight. Only Arya and a single oarsman, a taciturn summer islander named Koja, rowed within. Behind them the blind cat loomed like a sleeping leviathan. Ahead, emptiness yawed. Arya inhaled, then tapped Koja's shoulder. He shipped oars silent. The sea around them dilated, water roiling upward into gentle mounds that did not break. From within that silence a low hum leaked, like a distant horn submerged. It vibrated bones rather than ear. Arya shivered, but not in fear. She recognized a call, the same pull she'd felt leaping at the Night King. A hinge moment. Water bulged. A shape breached, big as Winterfell's gatehouse, smooth, luminous like moonstone. It hung half out of ocean, arching overhead, an impossible archway grown of living pearl. Beneath it, the sea funneled into inky throat.
Ara espal skemerd, koja visperda prer.
She thought of Jon, of Sansa, of the sapling leaves brushed across her cheek the day she set sail. Then she thought of the map that did not yet exist, the blank parchment of West. "Forward," she said.
Koja bade.
The longboat slipped into shadow. The air inside was warm, smelling of cedar and snow together. The arch narrowed behind. Starlight melted. For a heartbeat there was nothing. No sound, no breath, only a pivot in the universe. Then light erupted. Sunrise poured in every color Arya had never seen. The boat bobbed into a bay of jade water under a pink-gold sky where twin suns shone. On the shore, crystalline trees chimed in wind like glass bells. Beasts with feathered antlers grazed silver grass. Arya laughed, tipping head back, tears racing down temples. Found it, she thought. The land no eye has seen. Koja made a circle over heart. Arya unslung pack, took the first step onto unknown sand, naming it Dawnfall Bay in her heart, then planted a single white and green seed gifted by the sapling itself. It sank into grit, sprouting instantly, leaves unfurling toward twin suns. She whispered, "Grow," and turned to wave farewell to Koja, who would ferry word back east. The world she'd left would not hear from her for many seasons, but someday ravens and ships would follow. Thousands of leagues east, on Dragonstone's seaward terrace, Jon jolted awake. The dream had been so vivid. Arya stepping through a pearl arch into light that bled new color. He sat, heart skittering. Ghost lifted white muzzle from hearthrug, blinked golden eyes. Across the chamber the cradle creaked. Little Brandon murmured, tiny fist punching air. Jon crossed to him, lifted the swaddled infant, feeling the steadiness return to his chest. He pressed a kiss to the downy head. "Your auntie writes maps in her sleep," he whispered. "I'll leave some corners blank for her." Outside dawn cracked soft orange across Blackwater Bay. Daenerys entered, hair plaited loosely, Rena toddling at her heels clutching a carved dragon. Jon recounted the dream. Dany smiled. "The world stretches each time a Stark leaves a wall," she said, adjusting Brandon's blanket. "Let's hope it never snaps." They broke fast on terrace. Rye bread, olives, poached gull eggs delivered by New Fisher Guild. Over steaming mugs of chicory brew, a raven fluttered to perch, Bran's seal. Jon opened. Northern lights shifting amber. "Winter's heart sleeps. Maintain tending." Simple line, but Jon felt Bran's reassurance echo. 2 weeks later council assembled beneath Dragon Pit's open dome, now roofed in interlocking glass panels forged from smelted scorpion bolts. Morning sun lit the hall like a prism, refracting rainbow shards across mosaic floor depicting the green and white sapling at center of 8 spokes. North, Riverlands, Vale, Stormlands, Reach, Westerlands, Iron Isles, Dorne. Delegates filled tiered benches. Freeholders, lords, guildmasters, maesters, and 4 newly elected smallfolk representatives, each wearing a woven sash. Bread, hammer, quill, and leaf symbols. Lady Willa wrapped gavel carved from melted throne fragments. Order. A hush fell. First docket. Report from Sam on orphanage outcomes. Literacy up 40%. Second. Brienne's motion to standardize nightly code across regions, substituting Dragonfire trials with truth-tellers from Dornish Truthwater Springs. Hall approved. Third. Grey Worm's Dawn Shield Charter. He proposed merging surviving City Watch branches under multi-regional command to patrol trade roads, not courts. Debate swirled. A Westerland spokesman feared new standing army. Smallfolk Sash of Hammer argued safety fosters markets. John rose. Dawn Shield's answer to this council alone, term-limited, rotated regionally. Shield's work where law has been thin. Roads, fields, not palace gates. Vote carried 6-1-1-2. Next, a Bravosi envoy requested right to establish permanent banking quarter within King's Landing. In exchange, they forgive 30% realm reconstruction loans. Smallfolk Sash of Bread opposed. Risk of debt snares. Sam proposed stricter interest caps. Compromise drafted. The Big Spark. Emissaries from Free City of Volantis sought extradition of Reynald Sand, claiming crimes at sea. Council face test of new legal code. Sansa, crisp and poised, asked for precedent notes. None existed. Jon suggested impartial tribunal of 3 maesters, 2 sailors, 1 Dornish elder. Even Cersei's trial had revolved around past kingly edicts. This would forge new cross-border law. Council approved, establishing First International Justice Board. Daenerys gave closing word. Reading letter from Arya arrived by Gull. Sketch of feathered stag and twin sons margin. Gasps. She withheld coordinates. Arya wished realm to grow ready before rushing west. But hearing of unburned land beyond sunset stoked wonder that eclipsed lingering fear. Daenerys folded parchment. We reclaimed dawn. Now dusk invites. Applause thundered. That evening Jon joined Sam and Gendry atop city's new lighthouse where Heartflame burned as living green beam. Ships queued along estuary lattice of lantern buoys. Sam explained flux crystal lens that harmonized with spear, diffusing heat yet amplifying glow. Old Town's beacon keep Beg's recipe, he chuckled. Jon said so long as they plant saplings first. Gendry pointed west, eyes shining. Imagine forges by those twin sons. We'll need sailcloth that doesn't scorch. Jon laughed, clapping his shoulder. And hulls that laugh at whirlpools. They lingered, watching beams sweep horizon, each picturing sisters' silhouette beyond. Winterfell, year 12 ABN. Snow dotted the courtyard though it was midsummer. Remnants of a brief hail burst that had swept from Ghostwood. Rhaena Snow Targaryen, now 11, stood opposite her cousin Torrhen Glover in new training yard. Brienne watched, arms crossed, Podrick at her side counting breaths. Rhaena rotated birchwood practice spear with fluid flourish. Jon recognized style borrowed from unsullied quick march forms. Torrhen lifted round shield, nervous grin. Swift as summer lightning, Rhaena feinted left, swept low, tapped shield rim. Torrhen yielded good-natured. Brienne nodded. Again. Jon and Daenerys observed from battlement with Lord Glovers, sharing mead. Jon marveled at daughter's agility. Dany squeezed his fingers. Dragon's grace, she teased. Jon retorted, dire wolf feet. Both joys. Raven arrived. Bran requesting urgent meeting in Godswood. They went, leaves rustling. Bran waited by hybrid tree, wheelchair carved now from driftwood and dragonglass inlays. His eyes far-seeing. Magic unsettles east of the Dothraki Sea, he said. Shadows move among old Valyrian ruins. I sense residuum of Night King's echo, yet warped. Daenerys frowned. Drogon's scales had vibrated uneasy previous fortnight. Jon asked, "Threat to realm?" Bran's lips thin. "Not yet, but knowledge beckons. A library of stone scrolls buried under smoking mountains. Valyrian ancestors wove secrets of dragon glass genesis. If shadow wields them, dawn dims." Dany's eyes sparked. "I left Essos aflame once. I'll not let ash breed new tyrants." Jon felt tug of father's duty to children but also guardianship of fire. They weighed possibilities. Bran continued, "You need not ride. Envoys with heart flames echo suffice. We craft twin lances, seed steel, carry them east. Wildfire not to conquer but to seal crevasses where shadow seeps." Jon pictured forging again. "Gendry will scowl," he remarked. Dany smiled. "He likes scowling." Return to King's Landing saw frantic smithies. Heartflame touched sapling leaves plunged in molten Valyrian shards from melted crown circlets. Two shorter spears birthed, Star Whisper and Dawn Root. Lighter, tuned to opposite resonance. Rhaena begged to accompany, promising top marks. They refused gently. She would guard north. Voyage set. Daenerys, Jon, Grey Worm, small retinue, plus scholar sappers. Drogon escorted but soared high to avoid panic across Essos. They reached Valyria's smoking coast. Ashen spires, sky crackling red lightning. Jon felt cold fissure despite heat. They navigated labyrinth of obsidian ruins to find gap Bran described. Crumbling Colosseum descending into abyss. Shadows moved inside. Humanoid silhouettes lacking features. Forged of ash and azure sparks. Half-remembered wights haunted by fire. Battle erupted swift. Grey Worm's dawn shields formed concentric shell while scholars planted crystalline orbs. Sapling amber bombs. Star Whisper whistled through air, its emerald tips slicing shadows which burst into shimmering dust. Dawn Root struck ground, unleashing wave of moss-green light sealing fissure like molten glass. Drogon hovered, exhaling controlled ribbons scorching ash but leaving stone stable. When final orb detonated, a pulse rippled outward. The red lightning ceased. Veins of stone cooled, cracks knitting. Daenerys lowered spear, chest heaving. Jon wiped soot from cheek. "Shadow sleeps again," he said. "For another age." In rubble they found vault door fused shut but faint hum within. Scholars insisted open later. Dany commanded seal. Some secrets heavy. They left Valyria quiet. On return, Council hailed victory but barely paused. Budgets, irrigation, election of new steward rise. Life beat on. Years rolled. Jon and Dany watched Brandon learn letters. Rhaena lead wolf pack of orphans exploring Godswood. Arya returned eventually. Sails sewn with twin suns sigil. Maps of Dawnfall coast. She spoke of crystalline springs healing fatigue, of beasts that sang. She persuaded council to permit limited exploration. Strict respect to native wonders. Trade began, iridescent fruits, feather antler seeds that thrived in vale gardens. Elder Sam compiled chronicles of Broken Night and Dawning Roots, 8 volumes. Bards sang Ballad of Heartflame used not to rule, but guide. The realm slowly forgot how to build scorpions. Kids carved sapling whistles instead. In 50th year ABN, Jon's snow-white hair, Dany silver still but fine-lined, sat beneath original dragon pit sapling grown into vast tree-shading amphitheater. Green-white blossoms drifted like snow. Children. Rhaena, now steward of Crownlands, Brandon archmaester of hybrid magic, chattered enacting play about Night King. Their script cast dragon not as weapon but teacher. White turned friend by green flame. Jon chuckled, legends soften. Dany rested head on his shoulder. "Think they'll remember truth?" she asked. Jon shrugged. "Truth lives in roots." He tapped bark. Faint hum responded. They watched dusk settle over city of new shapes. Wind turbines near bay, aqueducts ribboning rooftops, spires of solar glass. Bell tolled. Sunset council session. Jon rose, joints aching but heart light. He left Heartflame resting at tree base, no longer needed at his side. Children would carry stories. Lances rest. As they walked, Drogon coasted overhead, enormous even in age, scattering gulls. He roared not threat, but song across twilight. In that moment Jon felt echo across realms. From Dawnfall Bay where Featherstag raised head. From Frostfang Valley where Sapling Grove glowed. From Valyrian coast quiet. From Silent Sisters Isle where an ex-queen knelt tending roses wordless. Across every hearth where bread baked. Across every school where quills scratched. The long night's shadow had gone, but its lesson remained. Light not singular, nor permanent. It required tending, blade held, seeds planted, stories told. Jon clasped Daenerys's hand, heartbeat steady. Behind them petals swirled, catching last ray of sun, a flame for instant before drifting to soil. There to root and rise anew, season after season, long after wolf and dragon's guard passed into lore, and children chased shadows only to light them with laughter and green, gentle fire. Sand whispered beneath Arya's boots as she pressed inland from Dawnfall Bay, each grain glimmering under twin suns like powdered opal. Coastal dunes soon gave way to a felt of swaying silver grass taller than her shoulders. The spears brushed her cheeks with a murmurous hush that almost sounded like speech, soft syllables of a language no maester had catalogued. She paused often, turning slow circles to memorize landmarks. A coral pink mesa that loomed to the south, an oddly twisted cedar whose translucent leaves rang like tiny chimes when stirred. With each feature she whispered a name. Mesa of the First Dawn, Singing Tree, Stone Serpent Ridge. Staking map seeds in memory. By the third afternoon she reached a river whose waters gleamed milk blue yet tasted like iced tea brewed with citrus. Feather-antlered deer watched from the opposite bank. Majestic, unafraid. When Arya bent to drink, they dipped heads as if in mutual greeting before bounding away, scattering petals from invisible flowers. She filled her skin, marked a rune on a polished pebble, and continued. She had long since lost count of how many new scents caressed her senses. Honeysuckle tinged with pepper, wet clay spiced with molasses, petrichor that carried faint violin notes. Each breathed promise that the world's edges were far wider than Westerosi cartographers dared dream. Nights brought different wonders. The twin moons, one pale lilac, the other deep crimson, traded watch across a tapestry of constellations wholly unknown. Sheet lightning crawled silently within distant thunderheads, painting the felt in ghostly inversions. Arya slept curled beneath the singing tree's kin, lulled by crystalline rustles. Catspaw remained unsheathed beside her, but no predator came, save a slender fox with wings of gossamer. It sniffed her pack, linked silver eyes, and vanished like breath on glass. Weeks blurred. Koja had returned eastward, bearing her parchment sketches and letter for Jon. Alive. No threats. Land fertile, spirits kind. Promise keep. She glimpsed the blind cat's sails retreating over horizon one dawn, felt pang of isolation that subsided into thrill. This continent was hers to trace. She vowed not to die before the first full map returned home. One evening skull-red moon rose over basalt cliffs. Arya scaled them to stand upon a plateau pockmarked by glassy pools. When the wind hushed she heard voices, lilting, polyphonic, carried on thermal drafts from fissures below. She crept to the largest pool and peered. In its depths danced luminous silhouettes, serpentine yet humanoid, skin banded turquoise and pearl. They sang without mouths. Notes quivered through the water's skin, vibrating air. Words formed not in her ears but within her skull. A greeting and a question braided into one. She responded in the only language of thought she knew, the silent recitation of the Braavosi water dancer litany. The pool glowed warmer. A tendril of water rose, shaping a spiral around her wrist. It left no wetness, only a faint blue tattoo that settled like ink beneath skin, pulsing with her heartbeat. Knowledge trickled. She felt where fresh springs hid, sensed weather shifts half a day ahead. A gift. She bowed to the pool until the song dwindled and water stilled, reflecting only twin moons once more. 6 months after landfall she reached inland sea whose mirror flatness dwarfed God's eye. She carved a small skiff from a silverbark cedar, rigged a sail using cloak and sinew. Winds guided her along luminous reefs where fish glowed aquamarine, revealing submerged ruins of columned halls. She anchored and dove, lungs strong from seasons of faceless training. Within weed-choked auditorium she discovered clay tablets etched pictographs. Swirling saplings bowed around ringed spear, twin suns above. When she surfaced, she traced image in wet sand then laughed. Sapling and spear belonged to home across ocean. Proof, perhaps, that the children's magic had once spread here too. She packed tablets into oiled leather. Upon returning to shore she found prints near her camp. Three-toed, large. The creature had approached fire pit, sniffed ashes, departed east. She tracked it at dawn, following crushed grass through jungle of crystal fronds. By noon she heard distant thud-thud of heavy strides. She slowed, knocked dragonglass arrow on the bow she'd crafted. At forest edge she beheld it. A behemoth twice Drogon's bulk, hide of lavender stone, eyes shimmering teal. It harvested fruit from tree crowns with trunk-like tongue, stomping ground that quivered under Arya's feet. Despite size, its aura radiated calm. She lowered bow. Wind shifted. It turned one sapphire eye upon her, released low rumble. Fear pricked, but curiosity stronger. She stepped forward, palm raised. The giant lowered head. Its breath smelled of wild thyme. She touched its cheek, cool, rough as granite riverstone. The creature hummed, a vibration that shook swallows from canopies. Then it lumbered away, leaving a trail of crushed blossoms exhaling candied spice. Arya's grin felt like new dawn. Years drifted. Her skin darkened bronze, hair grew long and wild. She braided it with shell beads. She moved camp seasonally, coastal cliffs in storm months, high meadows in bloom times, desert plateaus during frost. She mapped by stars and sun shadow, sketching coastlines on vellum made from cloud goat hide, inking with sap and octopus dye. She named rivers Nymeria's Veil, Jon's Oath, Sansa's Grace. Mountains became Gendry's Forge, Brienne's Shield, Samwell's Tower. She discovered obsidian crags that sang when struck, valleys where rain fell upward in spirals, islands of floating pumice supporting moss hedges. Each wonder she recorded thrice. Once on parchment, once in carved bone runes, and once in the tales she rehearsed at night so no memory slipped away. 3 spring cycles later she found human tracks. Bare feet, slender. For 3 days she followed them through Orchid Marsh until arriving at village hidden inside petrified mangrove labyrinth. Houses were woven hoops suspended from branches, connected by rope bridges. People emerged, tall, russet-skinned, hair beaded with silver seeds. Their language clicked and fluted. Arya offered greeting by laying catspaw at her own feet. The gesture resonated. They welcomed her, weaving crown of reed and moonstone. She spent green moon with them, learning melodies of river tides, drinking fermented cactus milk, trading stories. They named her Sky Seed after the tattoo's glow. One elder, hollow-eyed but vigorous, traced sigil on clay, identical to Bran's 3-eyed raven. He placed clay in her palm and pushed gently toward east. Message understood, your roots call, wings must return. When monsoon abated she built catamaran, bigger than first skiff, rigged with canvas dyed golden by flowers. She loaded scroll chests, obsidian singing stones, jars of coral ink, feather antler seedlings, and bundles of the village's luminous reed flower. 10 volunteers boarded, ambassadors eager to see world across horizon. They farewelled Dawnfall Bay beneath chorus of bells from crystal trees. The voyage west to east lasted small eternity. Storms, doldrums, rainbow waters where leviathans surfaced to spout sapphire plumes. A volunteer died of fever. They cast her wrapped in silk, singing new song Arya adapted from Winterfell's dirge. She taught them Westerosi words. In exchange they taught silent spear dance that fused with her water dance fluidly. When at last sunrise sun crowned familiar sky, the blind cat, refitted with ironwood hull, found them near stepstones. Jalabar Ho nearly wept seeing Arya alive. Convoy sailed for King's Landing. News raced ahead by Raven. Council convened thronged docks. Jon, hair snow-silver, stood with Daenerys, Rhaena, Bran, Sam, Gendry. Tears glimmered as Arya leapt from rail straight into Jon's embrace. Featherfolk, called the Shyly, stepped onto Westerosi soil, marveling at stone walls. Their leader, Elder Vela, bowed before sapling planted in Harbor Square. Leaves shimmered answering resonance. Council housed them in Dragon Pit Enclave, where they taught glassbell horticulture, traded reed flour that baked bread emitting faint sunlight warmth even when cold. Rhaena studied their spear dance. Gendry studied crystalline metallurgy they used for arrowheads. Arya unfurled map across council table. Gasps. Continent outline resembled coiled dragon facing west, 8 rivers radiating like claws. She pointed markers. Obsidian mines, crystal orchards, singing valley. Bran placed hand. Eyes rolled white. He saw root network bridging under ocean, connecting sapling hearts. One land once, he whispered. Fracture during doom of Valyria severed magic veins. Rejoining would strengthen world's ward against shadow. Debate over colonization flared. Arya bared knife at first mention of conquest. Rhaena argued for pilgrim houses, tiny, respectful, trading posts only. Daenerys insisted council draft treaty protecting Shyly sovereignty. It passed. Dawnfall Accord. No settlement without tribal invitation. Resource exchange honoring parity. Ships soon ferried scholars, healers, artisans. Arya refused alleys of bureaucracy, instead guiding first diplomatic caravan. She sailed again east to west, this time with Rhaena, Sam's son Jon Well, now Maester Apprentice, and Gendry's niece Talifern, a gifted builder. Drogon followed high as cloud, shepherd of skies. Meanwhile in Westeros, seeds of new challenge sprouted unseen. In Frostfangs, deep beneath Bone Gate's cavern, miners searching for moonglass discovered Crimson Glacier entombing a man-like shape, taller than Night King, crowned with antler-like horns. His breast held obsidian shard pulsating faint red. They hauled shard to surface, ignoring foreman's warnings. At dusk the shard exhaled vapor. Miners collapsed. By dawn, only frost-scorched footprints remained, leading north. Castle Black's Northern Watch, manned now by volunteers of every realm, spotted silhouette crossing ice flats beneath Aurora. Horned, swathed in storm cloud. Raven flew to Bran. Council reconvened at Winterfell just as first snow of early winter whispered across bastions. Bran reported vision. A being older than Night King, scion of First Shadow, restless once ice melted. It seeks Heartforge at Shattered Fist of the First Men, where children bound red glass to moon or long ago. If Horned Shadow claims Forge, it could shape Nightstorm blades immune to green fire. Jon and Daenerys, back from Dawnfall Summit, prepared again. They were older, joints stiff, but resolve sharp. Rhaena begged inclusion. Jon paused, saw flame in her gray-violet eyes, sighed. Allowed with condition she guard sapling carriers, not frontline. She agreed. They marched north with dawn shields, free folk, Shyly rainsingers who wielded crystalline flutes conjuring sonic barriers, and Samwell's maesters bearing alchemic salves. Arya arrived last minute, carving her own promise into ice wall. One more dance, ghost ancient yet swift, led. At Fist of First Men, blood moon eclipse cast crimson glow. Horned Shadow waited among stone rings, forging shards into spear using Aurora for Envil. Jon felt chill deeper than previous winter, this one bled memory itself. Battle erupted. Shadow strike severed history threads. Soldiers forgot their names mid-swing. Rhaena's dawn leaf circlet shielded her. She rallied others by shouting their stories, anchoring minds. Shyly flutes produced resonance, negating forgetfulness. Arya circled, catspaw flickering. Daenerys rode Drogon in tight arcs, breathing only enough flame to melt memory-eating fog not ground. Jon and Shadow met at Heartforge. Heartflame spear clashed with Nightstorm blade, sparks birthing constellations. Each time blades met, visions flashed. Winter civilizations lost, dawn hearts rekindled. Jon's knees buckled, but he leaned on stories. Bran's tales, Shepherd's Hearth, bread crowns, dawnfall bells. He channeled all into final thrust, guided by Arya's voice from flank. Stick him with the pointy end. Heart flame pierced obsidian shard in chest. Red glass exploded into aurora shards that ascended sky, weaving back into lights. Shadow released roar older than words, dissolved into snow swirling harmless. Silence fell. Maester's documented phenomenon as second breaking. Though no death followed this time, only widespread amnesia cured by storytellers. Bran later wrote that world's memory now tethered to living roots across continents. As long as saplings stood, forget Shadow couldn't return. After battle, Rena knelt by forge. Molten residue cooled into translucent crystal. She lifted it. Within flickered both green and red swirl, balance of dawn and dusk. Bran's suggested name, Equinox Stone. Council placed it beneath Dragon Pit Tree in nested chambers, guarded by order of storytellers. Knights sworn not to war but to memory, blades replaced by pens and lutes. Years rippled out like pond rings. Arya finally settled, sort of splitting seasons between Dawnfall and Winterfell, teaching children stealth and respect. Shiley and Westerosi intermarried. Languages melded into lilting dialect. Valyrian ruins remained sealed, watched by joint patrols of Dawn Shields and Rainsingers. Learning thrived. Citadels built along Old King's Road where crystal technology powered warm greenhouses growing citrus in winter. Jon aged into legend, hair white as snow on wall. Dany equally silver, her laughter still crackling flame. When their joints protested stairs, they made home in Wintertown Cottage, leaving governance to younger council. Drogon roost on stony shore cliffs, seldom flying except on solstice to circle Heartflame Lighthouse once. Ghost died quietly beneath Weirwood Ash Hybrid, aged 52. He was buried under its roots, stone paw marking. On Jon's 90th name day, Realms celebrated Feast of Three Dawns. Long Night, Dawnfall Discovery, Forget Shadow Defeat. Jon, frail but eyes bright, sat beneath Dragon Pit Tree with Dany, Bran, Arya, Sam, Rena, and grandchildren. Choir of mixed children sang anthem woven of Shiley flute motifs, Stark drumbeat, free folk yodel, and old Valyrian refrain. When final note faded, Jon spoke softly, voice barely wind. Stories guard us better than walls. Tend them. He closed eyes. Breath slipped away like leaf in breeze. Dany, tears glinting, pressed forehead to his. Your watch ended long ago, my love. But you stood anyway. She kissed him, then rose. Tall, steady. She raised Heartflame, museum kept but unsheathed this day, and declared, let us plant again. They buried Jon beneath sapling in Winterfell Godswood, mingling his ashes with ghost soil. Years afterward, travelers from far kingdoms stood in Godswood to feel warmth radiating even in snow. Leaves whispered of wolf and dragon who chose bread before flame, memory before crown. Children still chased each other, shouting legend of Catspaw and twin sons. The world rotated under twin safeguards, roots of memory and wings of curiosity. Whatever winters approached, they would find Realm holding torches high, forging spears of gentle fire, planting seeds even in ash. And somewhere over gilded horizon, beyond Dawnfall's singing valleys, Arya's maps stretched further. Blank spaces she purposely left for new hands to fill, new breaths to name. Because the story never finished. It merely invited voices each generation to write next stanza beneath ever-widening dawn.